Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell.
Robert shuddered and entered the dark room. "Come this way, please." The orderly led him down some long corridors. Finally, they found themselves in a light-filled hall. There was a table in the middle, a lifeless body lying on it under a sheet. The young man took a deep breath, trying to cope with the lump of tears in his throat. He couldn't get himself under control. "Are you ready?" The pathologist looked at Robert carefully. "Yes," the man whispered, finally regaining his composure. The orderly pulled back the white sheet, and Robert went pale and swayed, grabbing the edge of the couch. "Is that her?" "It's her, it's Melissa. There's no doubt about it." "Who are you to the deceased?" "Me, I'm her fiancé. We had everything ready for the wedding." "I'm sorry for your loss. She was so young, she should have lived and lived." "Be strong. You've got the most difficult ordeal ahead of you, the funeral." "I can't believe it." In a trembling voice, the grief-stricken man said, "She's gone. Just a few hours ago, I was hugging her, kissing her, and she was laughing. She has an amazing laugh, and now—" He touched his bride's lifeless hand. "Her hand is cold. She will never smile at me again. How can this be?" He clutched his hands to his head, groaned, "To accept such a death. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Though I look at her and see that it is her. Death and Melissa are incompatible. It doesn't make sense. I couldn't imagine in my wildest dreams that this could happen. She loved life so much. God, why? Why did He take her away from me? How happy she and I would have been together. Why is the world so unfair? My darling, how can I be without you? If I had been with you that night, I would have saved you. I would have died, but you would still be alive. But I wasn't there. My darling, my darling?" "Yes," the pathologist sighed. "Too bad about her and the baby. She could have had more children. She's beautiful." "What baby?" The man looked at her, uncomprehending. "You didn't know?" The doctor shrugged. "Your fiancée was pregnant, 8 weeks already." "I'm sorry, this must be hard for you to hear." "Pregnant? What do you mean?" The bereaved groom looked from the orderly to the pathologist, bewildered by the unexpected news. He felt as if he had been knocked out from under his feet. "It can't be. You must have made a mistake. Melissa could not have been pregnant. I would have known. Maybe some other doctor could misdiagnose, but not me." The doctor shook his head. Robert turned pale. "Are you feeling all right?" An orderly asked anxiously, "Why don't I take you outside? Sit here on the bench, get some fresh air, you'll feel better." "I'm sorry for you. So many things all at once on one person's head." "Don't worry, you're young. It'll all work out. Time heals wounds like this. You'll meet a woman. She'll bring you back to life." Yes. I'd better go. I need to be alone." "It's me. It's my fault." Robert followed the orderly, not listening to him, muttering to himself. "If I'd stopped her, if I'd talked her out of going to that damn club, she'd still be alive and I didn't insist. Who could have stopped her, though? I agreed with her on everything. I couldn't say no to anything. Melissa, my Melissa, I'll never forgive myself for this. It's not your fault. No one could have known such a disaster would happen. You couldn't have known there'd be a fire, and you'd better not be alone now. Is there someone to take care of you?" The orderly asked kindly, opening the door for him, but the young man did not hear him. He was grieving. "My beloved Melissa is gone. How can I live? How can I live?" Robert wandered down the alley, seeing nothing in front of him, walking and muttering to himself under his nose like a madman. My Melissa, my girl, how will I live without you? Why? Why did you leave? I didn't keep you safe. I didn't stop you. If you'd listened to me, you'd still be alive. Honey, Melissa was fidgeting in front of the mirror, picking out an outfit. Look, what dress do you think I should wear? Her cell phone beeped subtly. Hello? Don't distract me. If you keep calling every 5 minutes, I'll never get out. The girl cheerfully spoke into the receiver. I can't decide on a dress. She complained. How impatient you are. I'll be there soon. Melissa threw the phone on the bed. Kitty, help me comprehend the zipper. How do I look? Fuck this club. Robert frowned, glancing at her unhappily. It was a night to be alone together for once. We haven't seen much of each other these days. You spend more time with your friends than you do with me. I don't like it. You're my fiancé. The phone screen flashed again. Melissa grabbed it, quickly read the message, smiled. You're not listening to me at all. Your friends are more precious to you than me. Don't be angry, Kitty. The girl jokingly kissed him on the tip of his nose. I want to dance tonight, but you can't get me to go to a club. What now? To sit at home like two pensioners and stare at each other. It's not for me. You and I have a lot of nights like this ahead of us, so you'll get tired of me. I'll never get tired of you. Can we go to a movie or just sit at home and talk? You? Why a movie? Melissa wrinkled her nose. We're not 18 years old. Tell me about sitting in the back row and kissing. What's wrong with that? But together, it's very romantic. And then we'd get in the car and drive around the city all night. No offense, but we've already arranged to meet the girls. Oh, here we go. The girl grabbed the phone again. There they are again. Yes, I'll be down in 10 minutes. Melissa laughed impatiently. Wait for it. Honey, look at me. How do I look? You're not going anywhere. Robert stood in the doorway. I don't want you to go with them. We're getting married soon, and you're always running away from me. I don't want to share you with anyone. I want to be with you every minute of every day. I don't know what's so appealing about a dark, smoky room with music blaring. And it's full of strange men, and I don't want them slapping you. Don't be mad. Melissa fixed her luxurious brown hair. It doesn't suit you, and besides, you're not my husband yet. She poked him in the stomach with her finger. Look, I might change my mind if you're going to keep restricting my freedom. Just kidding. She smiled sweetly at her lover. Don't be possessive. What can I do if I'm not a homebody? Do you want me to sit at home, knitting socks in the evenings? You must admit, it's very boring. And anyway, I'd like to go out a little before the wedding. Then I promise I'll only be around you. I'm all yours now, but I don't want to give up my friends either. Don't be a nuisance. She gently pressed her whole body against him. Don't keep me here, or my friends will come for me. You don't want them to make a fuss, do you? Please don't go. I missed you. I haven't seen you all day. I wanted to spend the evening with you. Why don't I cook dinner, or we can order in, and then we can sit together. Open a bottle of wine. The whole night is ours. I miss you too, my love. She gave him a quick kiss and deftly slipped past him to the exit. I feel like dancing for tonight. Her cell phone buzzed. Here's the message again. I'm already expected. Without stopping me. Throw the phone away. He tried to take it away from the girl. You're always talking to someone, texting. You don't care about me, and I'm your fiancé, your husband. I'm aware of that, kitten. Don't spoil my mood. Don't disappoint me. I promise it'll be the last time. Bye, honey. She sent him a kiss from the doorway. I won't be long. I'll be back before you know it. You and I have a lot of nights ahead of us. I love you. I'll be back soon. Finally met Melissa's friends right outside the club. We thought you'd never come. You're already struggling to get out of your fiance's arms now. But what happens when you're married? Will he make you stay home? It would be fun to imagine Melissa as a model mother and wife. That's hilarious. Melissa, I would love to see this picture. Can I be your firstborn's godmother? Melissa, can you cook? I'd pay a lot to see you at the kitchen table. I hope your husband dies of old age and not poisoning himself at one of the family dinners. A model wife in an apron and a frying pan in her hand. Laugh, though your jokes are inappropriate. Everything will be just the way I want it. The pretty girl replied haughtily. Robert loves me, so I have no inhibitions in our house. Why are we standing here? Let's dance. Melissa, you look amazing in that dress. Admiringly looking at her, Mason said, and me. Pouted her lips offensively, his friend Helen. And you, of course. Gently kissing her on the top of her head, reassured the young man. I'm a polite man, just had to compliment your friend. I suggest having a glass of cocktail. Melissa moved to the beat of the music. The mirror ball under the ceiling cast a glare on the dancers. The mood was perfect. For the mood, we don't mind, replied the young people and rushed to the bar. And the groom won't say anything to you? He's sitting alone at home, and you're having fun with us, and suddenly he'll get a great idea to come here. Helen took a sip, then another. Helen, Robert is the kind of man who prefers the comforts of home to the fun of the club, so I have nothing to fear. And then he realizes I'm not drinking juice here, so don't attack him. He's a good man and he loves me, and that's worth a lot, and he doesn't ask for anything in return. You'll run away from him in a week. My friend remarked, he's boring and all right. Do you really like the prospect of living with him for the rest of your life? Stop. Stop all this talk about my fiancé. Tonight we're gonna have a lot of fun. Great music. Her supple body picked up the rhythm with pleasure. Melissa gave herself over to the dance, oblivious to her surroundings. I'm tired, Helen said. Let's sit down for a while, shall we? The company sat down at the table on cozy leather sofas. You guys are so cool. Mason looked at one girl and the other with a smile. You don't drink anything at all. Should I suggest some other cocktail? 'Cause I'm supposed to be as smooth as a whistle. My baby, Robert, will be mad at me if I come home too tipsy. She looked playfully at her date, Michael. And I don't need that before the wedding. Shall we go dancing then? The man suggested. Both couples stepped onto the dance floor and moved to the music. You're so hot. Pulling her close to him, Michael said. You're a lot of fun, but I'm looking forward to more. You wouldn't deny me the pleasure of kissing you somewhere in a private corner of this room, would you? Careful. Melissa laughed, tilting her head back to get a better look at her companion. I'm married without 5 minutes. So what? The man's eyes reflected desire and admiration for the girl. Today your fiancé is not around, and you are mine for this evening. Isn't that right? I dreamed to take off this dress, to feel under my palms your silky skin. You want that too, don't you? Admit it, I can see you're trembling with impatience. Yes, I want to relax tonight. She tilted her head and laughed. She was dizzy from the cocktail she'd drunk. The music hanging in the air, the tobacco smoke, the hall lights, everything created a cheerful atmosphere. Listen, suddenly the girl stopped and looked around warily. Don't you think it smells like burning? I think so. Her companion laughed and tried to kiss his partner. It's time for a drink. Come on, our friends have been waiting for us. We should take a break. Can't you smell burning plastic? You're just imagining it. Look, everyone's dancing, and nobody notices. Don't panic. If something happened, they'd have raised the alarm long ago. Don't be a bore. Let's go to ours. I feel so good with you now. Melissa, now and then looking around, followed Michael. Anxiety did not let her go. We thought you weren't coming back. Helen pouted her lips resentfully. It's not fair to your friends. Don't disappear for too long. We're already here with you. Michael kissed her on the cheek. Melissa feels like something is burning somewhere. You shouldn't laugh. The girl furrowed her brow in concern. It really smells like something. Can't you smell it? Don't make it up. The man handed her a glass with a cocktail. Drink, relax. They impatiently drained the glasses. Now come with me. There's something we need to discuss. He glanced meaningfully at his buddies, picked up his companion, and headed out of the hall, looking for a place of privacy. I don't understand. Helen stared after the couple. What was Melissa thinking? She's about to get married, and she's out with someone else. And she's not afraid that Robert will tell about her adventures. She's desperate. I feel sorry for her fiancé. He'll have a lot of grief for her. None of your business. She's got her own head on her shoulders. That's what Mason said. I hope you're not going to tell Robert about Melissa. He sniffed uneasily. Hey, it does smell like burning. Shouldn't we be getting some fresh air? Suddenly the lights blinked. Once. The music stopped, and the hall became dark. Visitors began to light flashlights in their phones. Someone took a lighter in his hands. Ladies and gentlemen, a cheerful voice of a DJ sounded among the darkness. Please remain calm. A little trouble. But don't forget that darkness is the friend of youth. The room erupted in laughter. Have a blast. In just a few minutes, we will restore the club. At that moment, something sparked at the far end of the hall. Then small flames burst out of the darkness. They flickered once, twice, and then disappeared as if nothing had happened. There was silence in the hall. People froze, as if in a hypothetical dream, waiting for what would happen next. A few minutes later, as if by magic, the flames appeared again, and they immediately skidded on the ceiling, on the drapes, quickly spreading through the hall, covering more and more territory with fire. Thick, poisonous smoke, then more and more confidently began to spread in the air. Burn! There was a scream, and people rushed towards the exit. Please don't panic. The DJ exhorted into the microphone. Try to stay calm. Don't create a crowd. Don't block the aisles. Everything is under control. There's no cause for alarm. We're all going to go outside now. Don't crowd at the entrance. Club officials are doing everything they can to stop the fire. But the crowd didn't listen to him, sweeping away tables and chairs. People rushed for the exits. The word fire was like a trigger. Pushing, shouting people rushed into the street, dropping each other, trampling the feet of the unfortunate who, unable to hold on, fell at the feet of the panic-stricken crowd. Disregarding their cries for help, the clubgoers were trying to get to the emergency exit. Please don't leave me. Let me out, let me out. The voices, gripped by fear and pain, rang out. Don't push, don't block the entrance. You scoundrel, you hit me. Help me. I can't breathe, do something. The people, mad with fear, tried to escape from the trap they were in. And the fire was spreading faster and faster by the minute. It licked the ceiling with its flaming tongue. Hot drops of red-hot plastic dripped down from it onto the heads of the panic-stricken clubgoers. Screams and moans came from all sides. Melissa, cried Helen. Where are you? Mason, they're nowhere. What can we do? We have to save ourselves. Don't slow down, or they'll crush us. I can't leave Melissa here. We have to find them. Are you crazy? How will you find them now? The fire's getting closer and closer to the exit. It's gonna burn with all its might. If we don't get out in time, we'll burn alive. Is that what you want? What do we do? Melissa is a close friend of mine. What if they can't get out? Look at this. It's pandemonium. You know, honey, in a situation like this, it's every man for himself. She's not alone, Michael's with her. Maybe they're already outside. Don't stop, I'm begging you. Smearing soot-stained tears on her cheeks, Helen said. They had already gotten out. There must be an emergency exit where they were going. You're right, we should get out ourselves. With Melissa, Michael, she's not alone. Together they won't get lost. Hold on to me. It's only a little while, and we'll be out of here. If we try to go back into the hall now, we'll be swept away, trampled. We have to follow the crowd. Michael will be able to save Melissa. You better take care of yourself. Obeying the flood of people, the young men made their way out. Mason coughed as he breathed in the fresh air. They're gone, Mason. Looking around in horror, Helen exclaimed. They stayed there. They're going to die. What are we going to do? Why do you worry about them? The young man waved his hand. The main thing is that we got out. The firemen and ambulance have already arrived. They will save them. Now just wait and do not interfere. Calm down. Nothing can be changed. Don't punish yourself. Helen sobbed on the man's chest. They are there. Choking on her tears, she shouted. They are still there. Melissa, we should have at least tried to help them. Why? Why did you stop me? There was the sound of breaking glass. Flames burst from the windows. Black clouds of acrid smoke rising to the sky. Everybody get away from the building. A sonorous voice came through the megaphone. Those who need medical help, come to the ambulances. Step away from the doors. Don't block the way. Let the firemen work in peace. In front of frightened people, rescuers unfolded hoses and began to extinguish the fire. The victims were taken out of the room and sent straight to hospitals in the city. That's not her. Helen rushed like mad to one ambulance and another, hoping to find her friend. She's nowhere to be found. Do you realize she stayed there? I asked you to come back. We could have saved them. We wouldn't have saved them. Mason justified himself. How could we find them in the dark? And you were dead. Who would have been relieved? I'll never forgive myself for my cowardice. I wish I had died with them. What makes you think they're dead? They'll be found and rescued. Look, they're bringing out the living. Can't you see the fire raging inside? No one could survive in there. Jesus, how are we going to tell Robert that Melissa died? I dread to think what will happen to him. It's none of our business. Let the police handle it. Let's go home. I'm tired. I want to wash up and go to bed. You can't help them now. How can you think about it? Poor Melissa, to die just before the wedding. Why do we have to go to the club tonight? Please don't split up. The voice on the megaphone has come through again. It is necessary to clarify the number of injured and dead. If you can't find those who were with you at the club, please approach the police officers and give information about the missing. We have to do that. Helen pulled Mason with her. Do you have any idea what Robert's going through right now? He's waiting for Melissa to come home, and she's gone. We have to report her, at least this last little thing we have to do for them. You do as you wish, but I'm going to the police. The young men headed for the Temporary Information Collection Center. Finally, Mason managed to convince Helen to go home. Robert could not sleep a wink until morning. Anxiety was growing in his soul. Why had Melissa turned off the phone? He wondered. She should have been back long ago. What could have happened? Where to look for her now? Should Helen call? What if Melissa decided to stay the night? She didn't want to wake me up. With shaky hands, I dialed the girl's phone number, but her cell phone was unavailable. Where are they all? Should I call the police or wait? The man couldn't find a place. Time passed, and his beloved never appeared. He did not notice how tired of waiting he fell asleep. It seemed to him that he only closed his eyes for a second, and then he was startled by a sudden phone call. "Robert?" He heard an unfamiliar voice in the receiver. "Hello. I am compelled to inform you that your fiancée, Melissa, was killed in a nightclub fire. We're very sorry for your loss." "How did she die?" "A man stood in the middle of the room and couldn't move. This can't be happening. She can't be dead. We're about to get married." "What happened?" "You must have made a mistake. It's not her." "I'm sorry, but it's true. It was a tip from some friends she was out with that night." The electrical wiring in the club caught fire. The fire spread quickly. People panicked. Your fiancée couldn't get out of the room. Her buddies confirmed she was definitely there. You'll have to come down for a lineup. I know it's a difficult procedure, but we need your testimony." "I don't believe it." Stunned, staring at the blacked-out screen, Robert said, "She can't be dead. It's not true." "What about our wedding?" No, it can't be. They were wrong. These people are definitely wrong. I'll go right now and prove it wasn't Melissa. She was just playing a joke." He fidgeted, getting ready. His head was buzzing, his thoughts jumbled. The man could hardly understand what was going on. Half an hour later, he was already standing in front of the medical examiner's office. After gathering his courage, he pulled the heavy door open. "It's good that they came at once." The pathologist looked sympathetically at Robert. "We'll get her back to you as soon as possible." "Maybe it's not my fiancée." Robert looked pleadingly at the man. "That's why we asked you here. You must be absolutely certain that this is your fiancée." "Ready? I'll get it. Do you need any help?" Robert shook his head negatively, pulled himself together, and looked at the body. Melissa's head was resting on the couch on top of a white sheet. Hair burned in places, no blood in her face. "Ah!" Robert groaned in pain, closed his eyes. His fingers clenched into a fist of their own accord. "Is this Melissa, your fiancée? Do you recognize her?" "Yes, that's her." The young man barely spoke. He refused to believe that Melissa, his adored Melissa, was lying immovably before him. Her face was a grimace of horror and pain. "My condolences." The pathologist was silent. "I think you should know that your fiancée was drunk, so she couldn't get off the premises. And also," he stopped talking again, "she was pregnant." "Pregnant how?" Robert was confused. "She didn't say anything." "Probably didn't have time." The lost young man headed for his car. He hardly realized what was happening. The most difficult ordeal lay ahead of him. All their friends and family had gathered for the funeral. Robert refused to believe that Melissa was gone. The farewell ceremony passed as if in a dream. Already at the wake, when almost everyone had left, Helen sat down with him. "Robert," the girl sympathetically squeezed his hand, "I'm sorry about what happened. I am to blame for Melissa's death." The young man did not hesitate to cry. "If I had persuaded her not to go to the club, she would still be alive. It was hard to change her mind about anything." Helen grinned sadly. She was a good friend. "And a bad bride," Mason remarked. "He was a little drunk. You didn't know everything about her. Friend, something she kept from you." "Don't you dare." The girl gave her buddy a warning look. "She's gone. Don't bring up the past. Let her remain in Robert's memory, cheerful, loving." "I will not hide the truth from him," Mason said stubbornly. "Robert, you must know I have no right to be silent. It is very hard for me to see you suffer. She was unworthy of your love. She is not a woman to suffer for. What are you saying? She was the best woman, tiredly objected the serene young man. And now she's gone. I can't imagine life without her. She was everything to me. I'm dead, crushed, ruined. I don't want to live. She wasn't faithful to you. There at the club, Melissa was with another man. She cheated on you all the time. She cheated on you just before the wedding. That fateful night, she was seeing another man. You're lying. Robert's eyes are bloodshot. You have no right to besmirch my fiancé's good name. She loved me. Melissa never cheated on me. Why? Why do you say such a disgusting thing? My poor girl. She can't even contradict you. Robert, calm down. Helen tried to stop him. And you shut up. She went after Mason. Can't you find another time for this kind of news? Can't you see the state he's in? You're hurting him. Let him find out now, and from us, the police will tell him anyway. Robert, Melissa died because she and Michael were drunk and making love somewhere in the back of the club. That's why they couldn't get out. When the lights went out, there was panic. We had no chance of finding them. You know, in a situation like this, it's better to move with the crowd, especially since we were expecting to see them on the street. I don't believe a word of it. Robert looked at Mason with unseeing eyes. Melissa couldn't cheat on me. I don't know why you're trying to defame her, but for God's sake, shut up. I don't want to hear this filth. You're lying. You've always been jealous of our love for her. Of course, this is the right moment to talk trash about my Melissa, but you won't succeed. Understand. I'll never believe she went behind my back to see another man. She was pregnant. We were going to have a baby. She didn't have time to tell me. How hard it is for me to know that I will never be able to kiss my beloved Melissa again, never hold our baby in my arms. I'm alone without her. I don't know why I'm still alive. It's not your baby. Helen said sadly. I'm sorry you're just finding out now. You too. Robert exclaimed sadly. She was your friend. She trusted you. How can you accuse her of cheating on you? Why would you want to besmirch Melissa's good name? I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I was hoping Melissa would tell you herself. So you knew. You knew she was cheating on me and encouraged them to see each other. You're 100 times worse than she is. That's your business. Helen objected. Did I have the right to judge Melissa? She promised to tell you everything and to stop seeing men. Why are you telling me all this now? Robert clenched his fists painfully, shakily stood up from the table. Get out of our house, he said softly, putting so much hatred into his voice that Helen and Mason recoiled in fear. I don't want to see you again ever. Forget my number. I have no more fiancé. I have no more friends. Remember, I didn't believe you. My Melissa was pure and honest and loved me. No matter what you say about her, you can't convince me otherwise. You shouldn't do that. Helen quickly got out from behind the desk and made Mason get up. I thought you needed to know the truth. And you asked me if I wanted to know it now. He slumped heavily in his chair, clutched his head, and froze, consumed with grief. Robert, we understand you're not yourself and we don't take offense. If you need help, know that we're always here for you. Mason put a hand on his shoulder and squeezed it, but Robert remained immovable. Son, his mother came over to him. What's wrong? Why did your friends leave? Leave me alone, Mom. Deeply, said the young man. I want to be alone. I understand, son. It's very scary to lose the one you love. She was so young, so beautiful. I sympathize with you very much. If I could do anything to ease your suffering, tell me. I'll do everything. Don't shut yourself in. Talk to me. Tell me what's on your mind. You'll feel much better." Clara stroked her son's head sympathetically. Robert jerked as if he had been hit. He dropped his head in his arms and sobbed, his heart broken. Melissa's smiling face stood before his eyes. She was so beautiful and unattainable. The man clutched the tablecloth with his hands and yanked it sharply towards him. There was a clinking sound of breaking dishes. Those gathered at the wake looked at him with horror, but no one dared to make a remark. Everyone understood how hard it was for him to bear the loss of his beloved bride. "Son, we have wonderful news for you," Clara announced at dinner. "We are going on a sea cruise. The tickets are in our pocket." "Congratulations," Robert responded indifferently. "Have a good vacation." "You don't understand, son," William added cheerfully. "We're all going together. It's been so long since we've been on a family vacation, and it's all worked out so well. What do you need me for?" "Come, I don't want to disturb you, and I'll work in peace and quiet." "What do you mean, why?" "It'll take your mind off things. Look what you've become like. A real recluse. The sea air will be good for your health. How many times can you give in to grief? Life doesn't stand still. I'm healthy, Mother, and I don't want to go anywhere. My life suits me just fine. What have I done to you? Physically, you may be healthy, but your mental state needs a jolt. You just need to change from office to quarters for a while. You'll see a whole new lease on life. Imagine 2 weeks of complete relaxation. Nothing to think about. I checked. There are excursions planned along the way, concerts, entertainment. Anyway, you can't take no for an answer. It's about time you started going out. I have no desire to go out. You go ahead and I'll stay home. You'll get a break from me, and I'll get a break from you. How can you accuse her of cheating on you? Why would you want to besmirch Melissa's good name? I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I was hoping Melissa would tell you herself. So you knew. You knew she was cheating on me and encouraged them to see each other. You're 100 times worse than she is. That's your business." Helen objected. "Did I have the right to judge Melissa? She promised to tell you everything and to stop seeing men. Why are you telling me all this now?" Robert clenched his fists painfully, shakily stood up from the table. "Get out of our house," he said softly, putting so much hatred into his voice that Helen and Mason recoiled in fear. "I don't want to see you again, ever. Forget my number. I have no more fiancé. I have no more friends. Remember, I didn't believe you. My Melissa was pure and honest and loved me. No matter what you say about her, you can't convince me otherwise. You shouldn't do that." Helen quickly got out from behind the desk and made Mason get up. "I thought you needed to know the truth, and you asked me if I wanted to know it now." He slumped heavily in his chair, clutched his head, and froze, consumed with grief. "Robert, we understand you're not yourself, and we don't take offense. If you need help, know that we're always here for you." Mason put a hand on his shoulder and squeezed it, but Robert remained immovable. "Son," his mother came over to him. "What's wrong? Why did your friends leave?" "Leave me alone, Mom," deeply said the young man. "I want to be alone." "I understand, son. It's very scary to lose the one you love. She was so young, so beautiful. I sympathize with you very much. If I can do anything to ease your suffering, tell me. I'll do everything. Don't shut yourself in. Talk to me. Tell me what's on your mind. You'll feel much better." Clara stroked her son's head sympathetically. Robert jerked as if he had been hit. He dropped his head in his arms and sobbed, his heart broken. Melissa's smiling face stood before his eyes. She was so beautiful and unattainable. The man clutched the tablecloth with his hands and yanked it sharply towards him. There was a clinking sound of breaking dishes. Those gathered at the wake looked at him with horror, but no one dared to make a remark. Everyone understood how hard it was for him to bear the loss of his beloved bride. "Son, we have wonderful news for you," Clara announced at dinner. "We are going on a sea cruise. The tickets are in our pocket." "Congratulations," Robert responded indifferently. "Have a good vacation." "You don't understand, son," William added cheerfully. "We're all going together. It's been so long since we've been on a family vacation, and it's all worked out so well. What do you need me for?" "Come, I don't want to disturb you, and I'll work in peace and quiet." "What do you mean, why?" "It'll take your mind off things. Look what you've become like. A real recluse. The sea air will be good for your health. How many times can you give in to grief?" "Life doesn't stand still. I'm healthy, Mother, and I don't want to go anywhere. My life suits me just fine. What have I done to you?" "Physically, you may be healthy, but your mental state needs a jolt. You just need to change from office to quarters for a while. You'll see a whole new lease on life. Imagine 2 weeks of complete relaxation. Nothing to think about. I checked. There are excursions planned along the way, concerts, entertainment. Anyway, you can't take no for an answer. It's about time you started going out. I have no desire to go out. You go ahead and I'll stay home. You'll get a break from me, and I'll get a break from you. Son, I realize the pain of loss is still fresh, but it's been a year since Melissa died. You can't keep to yourself. Hasn't the discovery of her death made you forget about her? Is she the kind of woman you should suffer so much for? I don't believe you've forgiven her yet." "Yes, Mother. If she were still alive, I'd forgive her for everything." "Jesus, Robert, you can't be so sad. Melissa's gone, but you're a living person. Life didn't end with her death. I'm sure you'll meet another good girl, and you'll love her. You deserve to be happy, and happiness walks after you. It's only worth a good look. What are you up to, Mom? Are you up to your old tricks again? Who is it this time?" "I'm not going to meet anyone. I'm sick and tired of your indomitable desire to marry me. Leave me alone for a while. Son, you're still young. You can't behave like a monk. Of course, I like that you're giving your all to your work. I'm glad that this zeal has had a positive effect on your career, but you can't do that. We want to see you happy again, and you're burying yourself alive. Yeah, and you've set your sights on marrying me. I thought you were kidding about the matchmaking. What kind of joke is that? You're a man, you're the next of kin. Look around you, you're surrounded by so many beautiful girls. Among the string of my potential brides, whom you invented to invite regularly to our house, I have not met a single one who could overshadow in my heart the image of Melissa. Incidentally, they all agreed that they wanted nothing to do with me. I'm glad they realize that now, and not at the wedding you would have surely played for us. Don't you ever think of giving me your consent to marry you. You are insufferable," Mother exclaimed in her heart. "No woman will not tolerate to be compared with another, especially with the one who is no longer alive. And my father and I just dream of marrying you. Oh, what beauties have been in our house. If I were younger," William smiled dreamily, "it's not about you, it's about our son." His mother sternly reprimanded him. "We didn't tell you that Jennifer is traveling with us, along with her parents. I think this girl is attracted to you. At least she didn't refuse to keep us company." "Why?" Father remarked enthusiastically. "It's not a bad option. She's a docile, quiet girl, and she'll make a good wife. With your character, you cannot choose. Too docile, or rather indifferent to everything." Robert sighed. "I don't think she cares whether I propose or not. I'm sure you're wrong. We parents are looking forward to you getting married. It'll be very romantic if you're on the boat, proposing to her, huh? Son, think about it. Jennifer's a very nice girl. You take a good look at her. Of course, she loses out to Melissa in looks. She was too flamboyant, too flashy, too gorgeous, too vampy, and Jennifer's different. But maybe that's the safe haven you need right now. Maybe your heartbreak will heal with her around. I'm not going to marry anyone. I don't understand why all this is happening. I'm fine on my own. I hardly know this Jennifer of yours. I don't know her, but she's a very quiet woman. Who knows what she's up to? You'll have a good chance to get to know her on the boat. Son, I can see you like her too. Don't make it up, Mom. I hardly recognize her in a crowd. And you can't get to know a person properly in 2 weeks. Let's not guess. Let's take a trip and see what happens. Don't deny it. You'll have to think about marriage and a bride sometime. Let it be Jennifer. Son, William put a hand on his shoulder. We're not forever, and we need to know that you won't be alone. We still have grandchildren to look forward to. And look at the girl. She's the right one, and she won't betray you, not like your Melissa. Father. Clara looked at him reproachfully. Don't hurt the wound. And you, Robert, think carefully before you refuse. All right, have it your way. The young man waved his hand. Well done. That's a good girl. You'll thank us at the end of the trip. A week later, Robert stood on the deck of a pleasure boat and watched the shore moving away. Robert, entering the cabin, demanded his mother. Let's go to dinner. Stop staring at your laptop. Jennifer's parents invited us. I really hope that if not today, then tomorrow you will surely propose to her. Mom? Robert begged, leave me alone. Here I am, sitting in my cabin, not touching anyone working. If you want this wedding so badly, make your own arrangements. I don't want any part of it. You've already made up your mind without my involvement. Keep doing what you're doing. One thing I can promise, if I can't avoid the wedding, I'll try to attend it in person. You're joking already. That's a good sign. It means recovery is just around the corner. My boy, we'll take care of the wedding preparations, you bet. But the marriage proposal will have to be yours. Quit your job. We're waiting for you at the restaurant. Okay, Mom. My son sighed. I'll be there, as long as it's over quickly. Good for you. True, everything is just beginning, but this is already details. I will not scare you. Promise me you won't take too long to propose. Clara walked away, leaving Robert in deep thought. He didn't want to go anywhere, but he realized that he couldn't avoid the dinners together. Without desire, Robert packed up and went to the meeting. The young people were assembled. The parents greeted him with cheers of joy. We never thought we'd see you today. Look how much fun. William nodded his head toward the deck, where the passengers were dancing. The organizers were holding some kind of contest. Jack and I have decided to join the dancing group. Our ladies refuse, and we're not going to sit still. Right, Jack? That's right. Jennifer's father agreed. But are we here to eat or sleep? We've got to have fun. Why don't we leave the young people alone? Suggested Doris, Jennifer's mom. And we'll have some old times' sake. The young people were left alone. Jennifer was staring off into the distance. Jennifer? Robert spoke. How do you feel about our parents wanting us to get married? I don't know, she shrugged. I'm going to have to get married someday anyway. Why not do it now? Your candidacy suits me fine. You saying that as if it doesn't matter to you who will be your husband. Why not? I'm not that cynical. You're really not the worst option. So you'd be willing to be my wife. Why not? She shrugged her thin shoulders again. Robert was surprised that Jennifer didn't try to make him feel comfortable. She didn't look at him at all, turning her brown eyes away from him. Outwardly, she seemed very calm, but her inner tension was revealed only by her fingers tightly locked together, the occasional twitching of her lips, and a pale face that had not a speck of blood on it. "Don't you want to know how I feel about you?" "Why should I? If even we are to be married, playing a couple in love is not at all necessary. Family life is stronger when it's built on mutual respect. Passion will fade over the years, but respect will remain. Isn't that right?" Meanwhile, the parents are back. "Oh, the kids." Trying to regain her breath, Clara said, "You should have come with us, the host of the evening, a real professional." "Exactly." Doris supported her. "I've never been in such contests. I'm tired of laughing." "And Jack and I," William remarked, "had a great time dancing. It's been a long time since I've had such a good time at a disco. I remember being a daredevil in my youth. Even now, you're a young man's man, too." The wife laughed. "If you don't mind." Robert got up from his chair. "I'll go to my room. I've had enough impressions for today. Good night." He was escorted away in silence. "Jennifer," Doris asked anxiously, "what happened between you two? Did he hurt you?" "And we had hoped that everything had worked out," Clara said disappointedly. "Nothing like you were expecting. We just talked for a while. And I think I'll leave you too." In the morning, everyone gathered for breakfast. The parents were discussing last night's party, and the young people were silent. "Parents," Robert spoke, "I realize that you are expecting Jennifer and me to make a very important decision for both families." He took a small box out of his pocket and opened it. "Jennifer, marry me." "Robert." The mother gasped. She looked at Doris with moist eyes. Had it really come to pass? "Son, how happy we are all for you." How I longed for my little girl to find happiness. Doris opened her arms towards Clara. Both women hugged each other warmly, and the men shook hands, but Jennifer said nothing to me. Robert inquisitively looked at the girl. "I agree." In a colorless voice, she answered, "Kids, my God, we're going to have such a wedding now." The parents laughed, congratulating each other. Fathers hugged Robert, mothers kissed their children and each other. "Oh, what a life we'll have now." Robert and Jennifer watched in silence as their parents rejoiced for them. "Doris," Clara looked worriedly at her future sister-in-law. "We're not going to put the wedding on hold, are we?" "Of course," she agreed. "There's nothing to think about. We should immediately start preparing for the wedding. The proverbial 3 months will not wait. I think a month is enough to send out invitations and book tables in the restaurant." The young people watched the scene blankly. It seemed to Robert that Jennifer was not interested in the wedding. She didn't take part in the conversation between the parents. She was thinking somewhere far away from the boat. "Jennifer?" Her mother addressed her. "What kind of dress would you like for the wedding?" "I just ordered a catalog, and there's such a good selection to choose from." "I don't know." The girl shrugged indifferently. "What's the difference? You can do without a dress. Buy an ordinary one. What's the use of this dress? It will be dusty somewhere in the attic." "You're wrong, daughter. A dress is a symbol of family prosperity. Show it to your daughter later." "Well, pick one for me. Whichever one you think suits me, I'll wear." "You know, Mom, I don't know about fashion. I rely on your taste." "That's what we'll do." Doris rejoiced, and with enthusiasm, began to discuss with Clara the style of the bride's dress. "To tell you the truth, I've already looked at something, even taken a photo. Can you tell me which one would suit my daughter better?" "Why did she agree to marry me?" Perplexed Robert, watching the new bride. It's clear to the naked eye that she has no feelings for me. Usually girls are happy to propose marriage, and this one, it seems that and just lazy was just lazy to refuse me. What if? Suddenly a hunch struck him. Behind the ostensible indifference, she hides fear. But what could she be afraid of? It's strange, and Jennifer's acting strange. But I don't like the whole wedding thing either, and in that we're alike. He grinned sadly. At least we have something in common. I'm sorry. He got up from the table. I'm a little tired. I'll go to my quarters and do a little work for the night. But how could you, son? The mother was confused. I think you should do the wedding preparations too. It's your party after all. We should think about who to take as a witness. Mommy, he kissed her gently on the cheek. I'm sure you'll do just fine without me. And you'll do the wedding in the best possible way. I trust you completely. You can appoint your own witnesses. I won't have any objections. The parents looked at each other in silence, but did not object. In the morning, Clara walked resolutely into her son's cabin. Robert, you're being disgusting, she declared from the doorstep. Intelligent people do not behave like this. You are disrespecting not only our parents, but also your fiancé. What happened this time? Sighing heavily, the young man regretfully broke away from his work. I think I did everything you wanted me to do. Can I be alone for a while? I have some urgent work to do. Your work can wait, but your fiancé can't wait. How can you sit here when Jennifer's bored out on the deck? You didn't show up for breakfast. You're sitting there like an owl. You've got your head full of work. We said we were going on vacation. What do you need me for? You're all having a good time without me. What do you want from me? I don't interfere with anyone. I agree with everything. I'm decent. Are you putting a price on yourself? Have you forgotten how to woo a girl? You're a young man. Don't you want to flirt a little? Mom, in your scenario of my marriage, there was no wooing of the bride. I did more than that. I asked you to marry me. Are you kidding me? The woman was offended. We arranged your personal life, and you ungrateful, laughing at us. I didn't expect it. All my heart ached for you so shortly, and a heart attack to live, and he still laughs. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. Robert jokingly put his hands in the air. I give up. You can't resist such ironclad arguments. I'll be on deck in a few minutes. Believe me, I'm very grateful to you and Dad for taking care of me. In case you haven't noticed, I'm all grown up and I'm not jumping up and down on one leg. I still love you parents. Oh, son, what has this tragedy done to you? Even the humor turned black. The mother left, shaking her head. The young man quickly changed his clothes. What am I going to talk to Jennifer about? He thought, she shows no interest in me. Does she want this wedding or not? I don't know how to start a conversation. Okay, I'll figure it out on the spot. I'll see if I can get her to like me. She doesn't seem very talkative. Jennifer, her parents, and Robert's parents are all seated in cozy chairs on the deck. Jennifer? Doris cheered. Here comes Robert. Take a walk. It's a beautiful morning. You'll be distracted. It will do you both good. Jennifer was silent, put down the book she was reading, and stood up. Do you mind going for a walk? Asked the young man. The girl nodded silently. They walked along the deck of the motor ship. The wind was developing Jennifer's dark hair. She tossed it back every now and then. I see. Robert was the first to speak, when they were far enough away from their parents. You're not thrilled about the idea of getting married either, are you? I should warn you right away. Without waiting for an answer, the young man continued. I don't love you. My heart is still in love with Melissa, and I'm not going to change my attitude toward life anytime soon. I only agreed to the wedding for my parents. You're the least of the evils my parents offered me in the form of a string of suitors for my heart. If that's the kind of relationship you're comfortable with, I'm fine with it," Jennifer said quietly, a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "You're the candidate, is it?" Robert was surprised. "Yeah," Jennifer agreed. "I'm sick of my parents, too. I know you're indifferent to me, so you won't qualify for anything. In turn, I won't bother you with my problems either. We'll live our lives as we used to. We'll have a perfect family. Almost nothing will change except the stamp in the passport. You spend most of your time at work. I'll also work, but I promise to be able to create a home cozy. I'm a good cook, by the way. I don't need money for maintenance. I earn good money myself. But why do you need me?" He couldn't understand how she could be so calculating. You can meet true love and find your happiness, and if it happens after our marriage, and you meet a man you love with all your heart, we'll have to divorce. I'm fine with that. Jennifer shrugged. "Don't worry, I won't be interested in anyone else. I know how to be faithful. You won't have to fight off my suitors, I promise you that. So you're marrying me on purpose? If that's what you think, then that's what it is. Explain it to me." Robert grabbed Jennifer's arm and turned her around. "Why do you agree with everything? It's my nature." She didn't even try to get out of his arms. She just squirmed, not knowing what to expect from her fiancé. "I'm used to agreeing to everything, and I like solitude as much as you do. That's why we'll be good together. We won't interfere with each other." "But that's not right." Robert shook her gently, trying to meet her gaze, but she avoided looking at him. "You're young, you're beautiful, you must dream of love. All girls think about it sooner or later. You're hurting me." The young man loosened his grip. Jennifer freed himself from his arms. "Let's just stand and look at the sea, shall we? See." She stretched her hand out into the distance. Dolphins always dreamed of seeing them. They stood in silence for a long time, looking at the sea. Already in the evening, alone in the cabin, Robert could not sleep. The conversation with Jennifer did not go out of his head. She was strange, he thought, lying with his eyes open. She wasn't interested in what her parents had come up with for the wedding. She didn't ask what guests would be there. She didn't even argue with the candidate of the witness. "For the first time I see such a girl. Why does she behave like this? What is she hiding?" Jennifer intrigued him more and more. On the third day, in the evening, he himself invited her to go out. Her parents looked at each other meaningfully, smiling happily. "You don't have to study me at all," Jennifer remarked. "I feel fine with a book in my hands. We don't owe each other anything. It's a lovely evening. I don't feel like sitting in the cabin." Robert was quiet for a while. "I've been meaning to ask you for a long time, but I've never had the chance. I remember you and Melissa were good friends. You know the truth, don't you?" "I know some things, of course, but I'd like to hear Melissa's story from you. I suddenly realized I could trust you. Tell me everything you know about her." "I don't know anything," she protested. "She didn't tell me much, and we weren't really close friends. She liked to have fun, and I preferred to spend my evenings at home and work a lot." "I think you do." Robert insisted. "But you don't want to tell me so as not to upset me. I really need to know the truth. This year I lived as if in a dream. I didn't want to see or hear anyone. I experienced everything in myself. I tried to forget and could not accept the loss and the fact that Melissa was not alone on that tragic day. I didn't want to believe that she was lying to me. I didn't want to talk about it." Jennifer had withdrawn into herself again, withdrawn as if she had hung a barn lock on the door of her soul. Robert groaned with frustration, slammed his fist against the rail of the boat. Of course, it was rolling around in his head. She won't say anything, she'll keep quiet, and I'll never know anything. How hard is it to live in ignorance? But she surprised him. I know. Jennifer suddenly spoke. But Melissa has been gone for 1.5 years. It's all in the past. Why reopen it? I need to know the truth. I beg you, tell me everything you know. I don't think you'll like what you're asking me. I don't think it will make you feel any better. And then she got quiet. After what you hear, I don't think you and I are going to work out. But why? If you were in my shoes, wouldn't you want to know the truth? He asked. I suppose I would at first, but then, now I'd give anything not to know. You don't know what you're asking me to do. Jennifer, please. Robert begged. Don't bore my soul. There hasn't been a day that I haven't thought about Melissa. I still can't believe she cheated on me. Somehow I trust you, and I know that you won't lie to me, that you'll tell me the truth. Even if I don't like the truth, I have to know it. No. Jennifer suddenly stood up. Not now. I'm tired and I want to go to my room. Don't torture me with questions. It's hard for me to remember. Jennifer, imagine how I've lived these last 1.5 years. I wake up thinking about why she went to the club that night. Who was that man? What attracted her to him? I fall asleep and torture myself with thoughts that I too am to blame for her death. Maybe I said or did something wrong. And I'm tired as hell, torturing my heart with questions, with no hope of an answer. If you can explain what was going on behind my back, help me. I'd do anything for you to get answers to my questions. Jennifer, I swear to you that nothing will change between us. Unfortunately, my confession will change everything. The girl looked at him sadly. Are you hoping I'll tell you the truth and it will ease your pain? I assure you it won't. Is it really that important to know whether Melissa cheated on you or not? Robert nodded silently, his gaze fixed on Jennifer. Yes, she was. Is that what you wanted to hear? With this guy who found her, or with someone else? I don't know. I don't know anything about him at all. Does that make you feel better? No. I guess it just got worse. I warned you, the truth doesn't make you feel better. I'm sorry, I'm gonna go to my room. Enough revelations for today. The girl left quickly. Robert locked himself in his quarters and spent the rest of the day alone. How strange, he pondered as he lay in bed. The news that Melissa wasn't faithful to me doesn't hurt so much anymore. I guess I've just gotten used to the idea. I'm much more interested in something else now. If Jennifer knew about Melissa's cheating, who else knew about it? Did it turn out like that anecdote? Everyone knew about the wife's cheating except the cheating husband. And if everyone knew, why didn't anyone open up to me about it? Jennifer knew and didn't say a word. What could I possibly have a beef with her? She and I barely knew each other at the time, and she preferred not to talk to anyone. She always kept to herself. But we had a lot of friends in common with Melissa, and no one said anything. Even my best friend, who talked to her a lot, didn't say a word. So what do I want from Jennifer? Jennifer. Robert smiled involuntarily. I've been thinking about her a lot lately. He pictured her touching smile, the sadness in her brown eyes, her fragile figure. It had been a burden to her to know that Melissa was deceiving me. How did she carry it all inside her? I wonder if Jennifer shared Melissa's secrets with anyone. No, it wasn't like her. She wasn't the chatty type. Robert closed his eyes and tried to sleep. Then he opened his eyes abruptly. No, I can't sleep. He sat up in bed. I'm going to go to Jennifer and make her finally tell me everything. What's the use of putting off an explanation? It's better to find out right away, to dot the I's and cross the T's. I can't wait till morning. So what time is it? He turned on the light and glanced at the clock. It's 2:00 in the morning. She's asleep, of course, but I can't wait till morning. I have to ask her now. She must understand me. Robert dressed hastily and tiptoed to Jennifer's cabin. He stopped in front of the door and listened. It was quiet. "Jennifer?" The young man spoke in a loud whisper and knocked gently on the cabin door. "Jennifer, please open the door. Don't be afraid, it's Robert. I need to talk to you right away." Robert listened again. The door was silent. He knocked more insistently. Suddenly, the lock clicked and the door opened. "What are you doing here?" Squinting against the bright light, the frightened girl asked, "Did you see what time it was? Why the hell are you breaking in the middle of the night? Are you awake too?" he asked, noticing her tear-stained eyes. "What business is it of yours? What do you need? Didn't your parents explain to you as a child that it's unseemly to pry into an unmarried girl's room at night? I don't want to get sentimental. We need to talk urgently." Shortly answered the young man. "Let me go. I don't want to be caught at this late hour." "Come in." The girl opened the door, wrapped in a silk robe. She immediately climbed into bed and covered herself up to her chin with a blanket and pointed to a chair in the corner of the cabin, a decent distance away from her. "Is she afraid of me?" Robert wondered, noticing that Jennifer was trying to stay away from him. "So what do you want from me?" "Jennifer, I am neither a psychologist nor a physiognomist, but I immediately realized that besides cheating on Melissa, you are hiding some other secret. I want to know about it. Have you revealed it to anyone else?" Tears ran down the girl's face. "Don't cry, please." The man moved to the bed, took her hand in his. She squirmed, but didn't remove her hand. "Tell the truth. It will make you feel better. I can see something's bothering you. You and I will soon be husband and wife, and I don't want any misunderstandings between us. Don't be afraid to tell me. Believe me, nothing will change between us." "I can't," Jennifer whispered, swallowing her tears. "I just can't. You have no idea how much this will change everything. Jennifer, I promise. Everything I hear will stay forever within the walls of this cabin. No matter how much I feel hurt by your words, I swear I will not retaliate. If you fear I will retaliate for the truth about Melissa, that includes her, does it not? Am I wrong? I just want to make you feel a little better. This secret's gonna kill you. You need to tell someone. Look at me." He made her look up at him. "You can trust me, okay? Believe me, I'm not your enemy. You don't know what you're asking, so tell me. I want to know the truth, okay? I don't want to be an ostrich with my head in the sand. I've lived like that for the last year. It's time to let go of the weight of my heart. I'm tired." He was so convincing that Jennifer couldn't stand it anymore, she spoke up. "You're right in saying that Melissa and I were friends. Not just friends, classmates. Sisters, perhaps, even, because we were so close. We did homework together, often spent the night at each other's houses, like best friends should." Jennifer didn't look at Robert. She was concentrating on the blanket, which gave away her inner turmoil. I loved her and trusted her immensely. She seemed to love me too. I admired her courage, her looseness, and I wanted to be like her. She drove the boys crazy and told me about her affairs. I envied her because I was afraid to even look in a boy's direction. Yes, we were close, though very different. The girl sobbed, and the young man took her hands in his soothingly. "Jennifer," Melissa stretched sweetly, pulling away from her textbook. It won't be long now before we finally graduate. 11 years had flown by so quickly, they haven't flown by yet. That's reasonable, Jennifer remarked. You're as stupid as your mother. Guess who my adoring wife will believe? Jennifer sat silently with her head bowed. Every word her father said hurt her. What did you think, daughter? War is war. If you keep quiet, everything will stay the same. And if you don't, but you've already realized what awaits you and your mother, you think I'm kidding? Be thankful I'm not going to divorce her, even though I'm sick to death of her. One more thing. Now that you know everything, Melissa will live with us while your mother's away on business, and God forbid you do anything to reproach her. It's my decision. If you don't like it, get out of my house. I've put up with both of you for too long already. Darling, suddenly they heard the purring voice of Melissa, and both of them shuddered. How much longer are you going to deal with your daughter? I missed you. The girl was in a pink, semi-transparent pajuara, which did not hide the appetizing forms of the seductress. On the contrary, attracted the man's gaze, igniting his desire. We're done now, aren't we, Jennifer? Without embarrassing his daughter, Jack kissed his mistress passionately. Good night, daughter. Remember my words. Jack gently placed his hand on the round buttock of the beauty, squeezed it. Melissa shrieked merrily. The man kissed her again. Finally they left. Jennifer sat still, only flinched when the bedroom door slammed shut. Robert swallowed nervously, squeezed Jennifer's hand, which he never released from his grasp. Tears fell down Robert's arm. He realized how much pain every word was causing Jennifer, gently pulled her against him. If it's hard for you to talk now, let's postpone the conversation until tomorrow. The young man suggested, I have already regretted 10 times that I woke you up. No, she recoiled from him. I've been carrying all this inside me for too long. I have to get free or my heart will be torn to shreds. She took a breath and spoke again. I was so scared. I was afraid to confess to my mom because I was afraid my dad would carry out his threats and we would be left on the streets. And then I knew that Mom really loved him very much. I did not want to interfere in their relationship, did not want to destroy my mom's illusions, happy family life. The girl was silent for a long time. Am I a coward? She quickly glanced at the young man. Are you judging me? Of course not. He stroked her hand. She withdrew into herself again for a long time. What happened then? Robert asked quietly to bring Jennifer out of her deep thoughts, and then the nightmare began. Every time Mom went away on a business trip, Melissa came to spend the night. They didn't have to hide anymore. As soon as my dad got home from work, Melissa would show up. They'd stay in the bedroom until morning. They didn't notice me, like I was nothing. I didn't talk to my father much. I didn't leave my room much at all. They enjoyed each other's company. And you, how did you put up with all this? What could I do? I went to my room and had to watch in silence as my father openly cheated on my mother with my best friend. And you never spoke to your father again. Didn't try to talk some sense into him. It was like he'd lost his mind. Jennifer said slowly, You know I feared him and hated him. With Melissa in his life, he became a total stranger to me. And now too, Melissa is gone, but the fear, it's still there. I live under a sword of Damocles, a sense of danger that won't let go. My father keeps his guard up. I try not to be alone with him. Sometimes he'll look at me like that, like an X-ray, and he'll see everything I'm thinking. How long has this been going on? Robert asked. Did they see each other for a long time? Fortunately, if I may say so, not very long. Melissa got pregnant. I don't know why, But she didn't tell her parents who the father was. They decided she was going to have the baby, and while it wasn't too noticeable yet, took her to another city. My daddy was only glad. Apparently he was fed up with her, or maybe he was afraid of the responsibility. Because if Melissa talked, he'd have to come clean. He was aware of the consequences. Jennifer was silent. What happened next? I don't know. The girl answered. The school year ended. Melissa didn't come back. I went to university, and I chose a different city to study in, so that I could live away from my father and not meet Melissa. Then I got a job there. I didn't plan on coming home at all, ever. It was hard for me to see my mom, who continued to admire my husband. I hated seeing my father. I wanted to forget everything. And yet you came back. It just happened. Jennifer furrowed her brow tensely. My job had been downsized, and I had been fired first, even though I'd had no complaints. And I've worked longer than most people. My mom says I'm shy. First we have to pass our exams. Then we can say goodbye to school. Hey friend, can I sleep over tonight? What's wrong? This is the third night in a row you've stayed over. I'm not sorry, of course, especially since Mom's away on business again, but it's still weird. Why don't we sleep at your place? I'm sick of my dad's remarks about what I didn't do. He'll always find something to pick on. Our parents are in trouble again. Melissa wrinkled her nose. I don't want to stay at home and listen to their quarrels. They always share something, and I get hit, as if it's my fault that they got married and gave birth to me. Okay, stay. Jennifer agreed. You'll help at home. We'll manage everything together, and it's more fun together. In the evening, the friends talked for a long time and fell asleep late. Jennifer was awakened in the middle of the night by a vague feeling of unease. Melissa? She whispered into the darkness. She reached out her hand and realized that the girl was not beside her. Melissa, where are you? Jennifer sat up in bed, listening. A minute passed, another. Her friend did not appear. Where had she gone? Getting up, Jennifer muttered. Did she get lost? Is she stuck in the toilet? Yawning, she walked to the kitchen, slapping the floor with her bare feet. Strange, it's dark everywhere. There's definitely no one in the bathroom and no one in the kitchen. Pushed by a vague premonition, she cautiously opened the door to her parents' bedroom. Melissa. Involuntarily shrieked Jennifer, caught with horror. On the bed in an embrace lay naked Melissa and her father. Dad, how could you? The father, as if stung, jumped up in bed, quickly threw a blanket over the girl lying next to him, with the same speed put on his underpants and rushed to his daughter. What the hell are you doing in the bedroom? How many times have I told you not to come in without permission? He hissed angrily, grabbed her by the hair, and dragged her into the kitchen. He pushed the confused Jennifer into a chair, turned on the light, and fixed his eyes on her face. Remember, you saw nothing. The girl listened to her father, and it seemed to her that in front of her was not her favorite father, but some furious monster with rabid eyes. Try to tell your mother what you saw. I'll destroy you both. Dad, how could you? She's my classmate. Jennifer's lips trembled and tears rolled down her cheeks, covering her eyes, but she didn't wipe them away, afraid to move, lest she anger her angry father even more. The skin on her head burned, but the girl endured. Resentment rising in her heart, Jennifer didn't know how to behave after everything that had happened. What about Mom? Mom? Dad laughed. Your mom doesn't get out on business trips, and I'm a man. I need a woman every day, not once in a while. And the fact that Melissa is young? He hesitated, trying to find the right words. That's the good thing about her. She gives me something I've never gotten from your mother in my life. You have to tell your mother everything yourself, or I will. I'm not gonna let you cheat on her. You can't do something so mean to her. Don't you dare." The father advanced threateningly toward his daughter. "And I dare. I won't let you hurt her. Mom will kick you out of the house. I'm the one who will kick you out because the apartment is mine. So think before you open your mouth, and your mother won't believe you. She loves me too much, that silly goose, but I'll do everything I can to turn her against you. Believe me, I'll convince her you're lying about me. Mommy won't believe you." Jennifer sobbed, not very confidently. "To the bosses need toothy, self-aware workers, and I could not defend myself." "So what? You couldn't find a new job?" "I couldn't get a job quickly. I needed something to live on and something to pay the rent. And then my mom started calling me every day and urging me to come back because she missed me so much." "So you came back?" "Yeah, I was weak again. I let my emotions get in the way." "You don't regret coming back?" "Of course I do. I felt like a sheep to the slaughter, and I couldn't change anything." "You're like a snail, always in a shell." "That's true. I wasn't very good at showing my feelings before, and I'm not so good at it now. When I'm with my father, I get lost. I can't say a word. It's like I'm paralyzed. At such moments, I see myself again as a 17-year-old girl, intimidated by my father in the kitchen. I can even still physically feel the pain I felt when he dragged me out of the bedroom. Also, it took me a long time to get rid of the mocking look Melissa always gave me as she walked out of my parents' bedroom in the mornings. If someone else had told me that story, I never would have believed it. Robert spoke thoughtfully. "I've been watching your family. Your father is very good to you, and I never thought he could be cruel." "Oh, yes," said the girl, grinning. "Sometimes I think I'm crazy, that all my fears are a figment of my imagination. Father acts as if nothing had ever happened. He's back to the kind and caring father I knew him to be before I met Melissa, and his love affairs are just something I made up. I almost believed I was imagining it myself, until one day Melissa came home. So she was out of town the whole time. Yeah, I didn't know anything about her all those years. I cut all ties with her after high school. I didn't realize I'd have to see her again. She came back a couple of years after I did. I was sure my father wouldn't see her again. And for a while Melissa had fun with other men, changing them like gloves, easily breaking hearts, manipulating the feelings of fans in love. I watched her from afar, hoping that she would leave my family alone forever, waiting for her to finally marry and settle down. Only I was wrong, naively believing that Melissa was thus seeking her feminine happiness. She wanted to make my father jealous. And did he succumb to her charms again? Not at first. I was glad she no longer had power over him. I believed that my father was cured of his morbid attachment to her. And then Melissa met you." Jennifer glanced quickly at Robert and hid her eyes again. "You were such a beautiful couple, and I had a hope in my heart that Melissa had finally found her womanhood. She looked truly in love. I'd already decided she was settling down. All that was before you met her was meaningless youthful fun. Family life must be a lot to live up to. I thought she loved me too. I never doubted my feeling for her. I'd tear anyone's throat out for her. And like all lovers," Jennifer smiled sympathetically. "Hadn't you noticed that Melissa is not what you thought she was, enchanted by her beauty and intelligence? You can't take that away from her. My father didn't mind Melissa's slight infatuations. He realized that she was deliberately trying to hurt his feelings and make him jealous. Both she and he knew what was going on. The rest of us were completely unaware that a love affair was unfolding in front of everyone's eyes. But with you, Melissa was about to get married. He realized that Melissa would soon be out of his reach, and forbidden fruit is always sweet. So Dad had another affair with her, which is exactly what your fiancé was counting on. How hard it must have been for you to see all that and not be able to stop. You're right. I couldn't bear to see my father and my girlfriend, and I felt sorry for my mother. She had no idea what was going on behind her back. They both stopped talking. Did you know Melissa was pregnant? Robert asked suddenly. Unfortunately, yes. She sat with her head down again, her voice low and sympathetic. I only found out by accident, and after Melissa was dead. The girl fell silent. It was hard for her to speak. Jennifer woke up early, habitually shaved her way to the kitchen to make her parents breakfast. She was stopped by her father's muffled voice coming from the kitchen. "What are you going to do? Raise me?" Jack said irritably into the phone. "It's too late. I'm a big boy, but don't tell me that you've never had a mistress." The girl froze, realizing that it was Melissa, although her father had not mentioned any names. "There, you don't need to conscience me at all. I understand perfectly well. There's nothing to worry about. I assure you, I'm not going to marry her." "Yeah, well, that's just the way it is. Could you have held out?" "Neither could I. Don't you know how these things are done? For money, any midwife will do the best." Jennifer went cold. Melissa is pregnant? The father wants to send her for an abortion? What a rascal! The girl shook with fear of being seen, but she forced herself to listen to the conversation to the end. There's no problem anymore. Jennifer heard that the father was beginning to lose patience. The problem solved itself. I didn't understand what Dad meant at the time, and later I learned that Melissa had died. I'm so sorry you had to find out all that. You know, Robert spoke slowly. I refused to believe that Melissa had betrayed me. I loved her so much. Didn't you? I literally idolized her, didn't want to see the obvious. I broke up with my friends who tried to open up to me about my fiancé. Now I know for a fact that there was no kind, sweet, open Melissa. You're right, I made her up. I'm sorry. Jennifer looked at Robert, not daring to look at him, and he was struck by her eyes. There was so much pain and compassion in them that the young man's heart suddenly ached. My family brought you pain. I have always felt a terrible sense of guilt toward you. I didn't know how to open your eyes. It's not your fault. Robert tried to calm her down. Yes, it is, she said stubbornly. I should have told you a long time ago. You probably wouldn't have believed me then, though. She smiled sadly. Melissa was misleading everyone with her charm, and I couldn't help it. Imagine if I came to you and told you that your fiancé was cheating on you. I wouldn't have believed it. That's why I didn't tell you before, but I don't want to keep quiet anymore. It's time to open that boil. She had no right to use you. You don't deserve to be treated like this. Jennifer. Robert looked at her thoughtfully. Explain to me why you decided to marry me. I'm filled with guilt, she confessed. I want to help heal your wounds. I know I can do it. I will be by your side until you finally come to your senses and learn to trust your feelings again. Then you'll meet a woman and you'll love her. And I'll be out of your life because you won't need me. Jennifer. The man squeezed the girl's hands and looked fondly into her eyes full of inexpressible sadness. I don't want you to go. You know, I suddenly realized that I don't need anyone but you. You're extraordinary, amazing. No, she objected. You're feeling grateful right now, but I don't want your gratitude. What do you need me for? I'm withdrawn. I like to be alone. I don't know how to get along with people. You need another wife. You don't know yourself. Robert said affectionately, I see a brave, caring, and defenseless girl in front of me. I want to embrace you, to be your protector, to guard your peace, so that no one would ever dare to hurt you even with a glance. But I can't give you anything. Jennifer answered confused, "You are here beside me. I believe that in time, when we know each other better, we can truly love each other. It's the pity in you that speaks for a girl hurt by fate." Jennifer shook her head sadly. "I don't believe in love, and I don't know how to love. My father killed that feeling in me, destroyed my faith. I'm just a shadow of a real person, and I'm burned out inside. You won't find happiness with me." Me. Robert took her face in his palms and looked directly into her eyes. "Do you believe me?" He saw how the expression of her eyes gradually changed. Among distrust, fear, confusion, suddenly flashed a ray of hope. The young man smiled broadly at the girl. "I believe." Finally, hesitantly, she whispered, "Then we'll definitely succeed." They stepped out onto the deck, breathing in the cool sea air. They stood in each other's arms, looking up into the endless starry sky. They had found peace and freedom by finding each other through fate. The unwanted wedding was the beginning of a bright new life for both of them.
Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. It really wasn't nice to bang a spoon on a plate like that when you were hungry. Sorry, Stephen Williams. This borscht is just like my mom used to make, except she used to add garlic. But my neighbor, who cooks it the same way at first, added garlic at least from this spice. I got heartburn. So Kay Levi, but that's okay. It's really good. You eat it. But there's also cutlets and side dishes. Well, probably rice. Half an hour later, they were sitting in the kitchen, drinking fragrant tea. Talking like old friends, or at least like teacher and student. "Stephen Williams, what else can I do for you?" "Yes. Here, let's see Christopher's file under the sofa, under the chair, and under the table. Maybe it fell there, and I'll look under the top. Though I doubt it's too big for it to be here, to just lay there like that without anyone seeing it." It's true Christopher's files were always weighty and voluminous. He carefully prepared documents, collected evidence, and in general prepared material on conscience, especially when the case was already going to trial. He wouldn't miss it. That's why Stephen went through the whole apartment for the umpteenth time and found nothing. And Camille had already looked in all the corners, even moved the sofa. But Stephen Williams, I'm sorry, but you've got more dust than cases, especially criminal ones. I'm going to get a floor cloth and a mop, and at least mop your floor. Don't even think about arguing. And then we'll take another look together. But when the floor is dry, they spent the rest of the evening going over the apartment one more time. They even went so far as to rearrange the furniture. But they never found the case. And the old investigator was afraid of one case, simply stolen from Christopher's office. That makes this whole thing look like a setup. He must have crossed somebody's path. What can I say? A smart man is always a threat to a fool, especially when that fool is in power. Excuse me, Stephen Williams. Did you say something? No, I'm sorry, Camille. Just thinking out loud, I guess. Come on, girl. Let's go out to dinner, and I'll throw you something to eat and let you go home. You probably didn't even sleep on the job. Yeah, I worked 2 days. And after your hearty lunch, I'm just so sleepy. Let's go. So are you going to work tomorrow, or what? I might need a day off if things don't change tonight. The old man quickly packed her home-cooked meal and poured a full plate of rice and 4 cutlets. He set out sliced pickles and tomatoes and commanded her to wash her hands and go home to eat that evening. Camille walked with a full bag of groceries, vegetables, fruit, cooked meat dishes, and borscht. Bulk, caring hands in a 2-liter jar. God, how lucky she was. At least she would be able to eat enough and sleep without waking up until the morning from the hungry carnage in her stomach. Camille walked and rejoiced, but she did not notice her small happiness. The attentive eye of the man who escorted her, or they would give the old general's house. and then had already let herself up to her single room. It was he who had been involved in Christopher being put in the SI zoo on a trumped-up case, but he was the only one who knew the case, which had been brought against a respected man, and which should not have gone to trial. Lost? No, Christopher had not lost it or destroyed it, nor had it been falsified. The case had simply been stolen. But who did it? No one knew. Neither the man who was closely watching the girl from the corner was not Christopher himself, nor many other participants of this confusing story. And the case was archly important. If it was not found in the house of the young investigator, his arrest would simply be canceled, and he would be released. What wasn't supposed to happen? They didn't take the case to their teacher. The man often talked to himself. Now, I asked the same question to my second, and I asked him the same question. He mentally went over this option and realized that it was most likely yes. And now this girl appeared in the house of the old investigator so inappropriately. Apparently, the old devil smelled something wrong and certainly invited her to his house to secretly give the papers. And she was a fool to fall for it. No, we should follow her. What if she's got the file? That could be a very real possibility. This Stephen isn't as stupid as he wants everyone to think. He's old school. He must have sensed he might get a visit. If he gave the girl the case, what kind of case would foretake? That's exactly where the case is. But then his thoughts were interrupted by the horn of a car that jumped out of the corner, which rushed so fast that it fell with mud from the nearest puddle. Oh shit, you're the only thing missing here. Serta fell head over heels. The man began to examine himself, thinking how he in such a form will go to his superiors with a report. But the deed was done, and there was no way to refuse the report. All right, I'll go as it is. Let the high officials see how we work. Simple soldiers of fortune. They sit clean and showered on a leather chair and do not sip in the warmth and dryness of coffee. But when he looked up after a moment, he noticed that Camille had disappeared from his sight. But that's all I needed. Missing the damn girl. What's the matter? She's gone. It's okay. I know where you live. He rushed toward her house and practically caught up with her in the driveway. At that moment, Camille was standing at the doorway, talking to her neighbor, clutching her bag tightly on her shoulder. And there you are looking at it, clutching the bag tightly to you. Surely the case there is an old devil, but I am not a fool, which means that tomorrow we must take a brigade and urgently here. The man didn't even bother to stand under Camille's windows and watch her further. He was sure that it was about her bag and everything else could be done tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow you and old Williams will go to jail and Christopher will go to jail. And I'm back to being the best investigator in the department. You shouldn't have moved me out of my position. John. It was John, who'd been losing his long way with his teeth. Now he's just out of a job. But he didn't like being out of a job, and he found a trivial way to steal a serious case from Christopher and frame it for forgery. But the amazing thing is, the case itself didn't even have to be stolen. One day it simply disappeared, and no one knew where it was or who might have taken it. Everyone in the department looked at each other askew, but no one could point a finger at the thief. And now John simply turned around and went back to headquarters to report the results of his investigation to his superiors. Camille, having had enough to eat, fell asleep like a baby. Stephen, however, could not sleep. He lay in bed wondering what he should do. Next, shedding tears in the park on a bench was silly. It wouldn't get Christopher out of jail because he was turning from side to side and thinking who could have stolen the case and how it would now turn out for his student. But whatever the version of subsequent events, none of them would be the most promising for Christopher. He's still going to jail, and someone's gonna get another star. Shouldn't we wait for that someone to come out and then fight? That's probably the right thing to do. Knowing your enemy is better than fighting windmills. But it doesn't work for me. A day in jail, a year lost. So tomorrow I will take action, and Stephen closed his eyes. Surprisingly, he fell asleep quickly, though he had not wanted to sleep before. At night, he dreamed of his dead mother for the first time. She stood on the doorstep of their apartment and pointed to the closet. "Mommy, I'm so happy to see you. But where are you pointing? What are you trying to tell me?" The man looked at the corner his mother was pointing at and was surprised. There stood an old wooden mop, and on it was his shirt, on which, as unaccountably Pavlovsky, were 4 stars of the captain. Wow! Did his mother, and in the other world, let him in the uniform on the floor rags? Yes, she's like that. Maybe. Mother never wanted her son to follow in his father's footsteps and join the militia. Stephen's dad was killed by gangsters when he was a year old. Since then, his mother tried her best to keep him away from the police. It came to the point that his mother even tore rags into his uniform and washed him with them. She checked the windows, tied in the vegetable garden, bushes, tomatoes. It came to absurdity, but now she did not want to laugh at her son's choice of his profession, but warned him about something. In his sleep, Stephen lifted a corner of the floor cloth, and a huge rat jumped out at him. At that second, the man woke up in a cold sweat. Well, there's your answer to the question. Christopher definitely did not lose the case and did not falsify his case stolen by the rat. Stephen smiled to himself. It was like a stone had been dropped in his soul. He wiped his sweaty forehead with his hand and stood up. There were still a lot of things to do. Make coffee, eat, call Camille, and ask how she was doing. Even though she wasn't, she's probably still asleep. Anyway, the most important thing is to find that rat that jumped on him in his sleep. And I'll bet you're the rat. You're the rear guard. Your own investigators would never do that. At least not a decent investigator. You're like a rat out from under a rag, and you're gonna bite. No, I didn't get killed in Syria or Iran. I didn't go crazy on opium. But here I'm going to be driven crazy by my own rats. The general got up and put his feet in his slippers and went into the kitchen to put the kettle on. It was a set morning ritual that set the whole day. He didn't start his day without a cup of tea. Stephen stood on the balcony of his apartment, drinking tea and thinking how he should proceed. What to do? To begin with, go to talk to the chief. Good thing he will accept me and introduce me into the investigation group. And then we'll see. Stephen often liked to talk out loud to himself. No wonder who could hear him in the apartment. Only his flowers and his fish. But neither of them can say anything to anyone. Christopher inherited that habit from him, and it's played havoc with him. What if he's not allowed to be investigated? No way. I mean, he's known to the department for a long time. He's a recognized authority. Christopher's his apprentice. They'll say you're pulling for your favorite. But Stephen never had a favorite among the kids or the students. Yes, he might have singled out a talented investigator or forensic scientist, but no one was his mind or his servant. One should be valued for one's earned talent, and no more, and not for patronage. And they'll tell you, friend, that it's a personal interest, and voila. Okay, I'll walk around, and then I'll see. I'll go with what I got. The man went outside and raised his head to the sky. He said hello to his late wife in his mind. Up there in heaven. That's how he always started his day. It was a kind of prayer, but praying is good. I have to go help Christopher now. I wonder how that Camille is. How did she sleep? Was everything good? Maybe I should go over and see her. After all, she wrote him yesterday on a piece of paper her address. And by the way, it is at the end of the park, that old 5-story building. And the second floor is not high. The old man won't have to walk up high. Well, I'll drop by since you invited me. They're not in the spotlight. I could use a face in my business. But approaching Camille's house, the old man was dumbfounded under the entrance where the girl lived. There were several brigades of militia. Wow, the old man thought. As they say, I'm a catcher, and the beast runs. Really, it's all strange. On the one hand, maybe it's not for Camille. This time, Camille woke up to the fact that her already flimsy doors were banging, probably with all hands and feet. At least, the rumble was unbelievable. Why should I be surprised? After all, John Barnett had taught his superiors so much about everything that he almost wanted to checkmate her and detain her. John, understand. Thieves and charlatans are worth taking out for profit. At night they are not. Igor Valentinovich, there's no need to be in such a hurry. We'll go in the morning. Let's take a warm one out of bed. Understand, you're a sleepy man, more talkative. He doesn't yet understand anything that's going on around him. It's not like someone who's been walking around all day nervous and on edge. I hope you understand. Yes, I do, John. I do. I just can't wait to close this case. I mean, it's our employee and an embarrassment to the department. Yeah, well, it's an embarrassment to the department. You'd rather have stars on your epaulets or a new position in the ministry. And read it. Don't tell me. Your power and counsel shot my grandfather and my grandmother together as white guards and servants of the Empress. So we know your bloodthirsty motives. Of course, the captain did not tell his superior all this. Why spoil his opinion of himself beforehand? Well, John, of course you apologize if I've been rude and unfair to you before. You see, this Christopher, he's really solved a lot of cases. But no offense, but yours has always been an honorable one. Second. Actually, it's first place now. I'm glad to hear that. And you know, I always try to do my best work, although I'm not always so lucky. Why do you have to do it by road? Garnett thought and smiled through his teeth at his boss. And now, since morning, he had been leading the detention brigade in their neck of the woods to Camille's address. Yes, it was her door that the riot police were now breaking in and trying to kick down that flexible barrier. Who is there? Camille shouted, as she had never shouted in her life, afraid that she would be swept away by this wave of hatred. John heard her scream and signaled the riot police to stop. That's the kind of amputee they get. But what to do is that he's the boss and only he can make the decision. It's the police. Camille, open up. The girl tangled herself more tightly in the old robe and opened the door. Looking through the slit at the big men with machine guns standing on the landing, she did not understand what could have happened. And through the dream, she simply did not know how to act. Who are you? I'm John Barnett, police captain, and I have a warrant to search your apartment, and I can either leave you alone or arrest you. And believe me, I have every reason to do so. It's strange, John. I've always considered myself a man of intelligence. And you just barge into this nice girl's apartment and search the place. Where are the witnesses? The witnesses? Where's forensics? The words of Stephen Williams made John not only turn his whole body back, but almost jump in the air. Yeah, thought the investigator. There's the main man in this whole group. Christopher couldn't have so cleverly thought it up all by himself and arranged it. Out of nowhere, it's the catcher and the hunted. No, it would be more accurate to say a wolf. Here you are, Comrade General Stephen Williams. I was thinking of coming to see you. I hope it's not a search. Imagine that. With all legal grounds, to visit and legally inspect your apartment. I hope, as a retired general, you're okay with accepting your colleague, but with all love and open arms. But you show me the warrant that will open my doors for you. That's one thing. And two, why are you banging on this sweetheart's door? The bandit didn't let John finish his sentence, impudently interrupting the old General. John, I see such a concept as politeness and respect for old colleagues is not familiar to you, and you don't forgive me. Scared long ago, and Christopher yours. John was. He wanted to say that it was he who had set Christopher up, but he bit his tongue in time. Aha, thought the old general. So that's where the missing case came from. But he didn't say anything out loud, but only smiled. I can handle it myself somehow. Not such an important bird. He's a fool, if you started it like this. The general smiled and looked at Camille. Camille, they haven't told you anything yet, except that they almost broke the door down. That's good, so there's nothing. If they decided to scare you like that, and then interrogate you. It's old school. Even though you, John, should realize that there are a lot of new methods to get a client to talk, you're still working the old school way. Stephen Williams, are you part-time now? As a defense attorney or covering for an accomplice? An accomplice in what? John, what can you charge me with? That Christopher stole the case, gave it to you, and you gave it to Camille yesterday. Not for nothing. She was pulling a bag home yesterday, and she was holding it with her hands so tight, it looked like she was carrying diamonds in it. So, John, you're a fool. I mean, really, you dumped the whole case file. Just like that from the doorstep to the first person you saw. John was shaken, and especially when behind his back the riot policeman started joking at him and laughing, saying that you are a fool, you investigator. You don't understand what's going on. Stop it, John shouted at the law enforcers. You are here as help, not as counselors. We don't advise you home. We're just stating a fact. Fool, what are you doing, getting involved in this case? The OLN team leader said to him, and turned around and left the apartment. Guys, let's get out of here. Let this investigator himself fight with old men and women. And under the loud cackling of the company of big OMON men, he began to descend the stairs. John's face was covered with red spots. The investigator began to choke with anger. He realized how much he'd missed. Now, Stephen Williams, although you are known here, I'm going to ask you to leave the apartment and not interfere with the investigation. The investigator tried to take a few deep breaths, so we don't screw this up, and pointed his hand to the old general at the door. But he was not going to leave, and began to dig in the inner pocket of his Syrian coat. Look at this lawyer's license. I want to represent Camille if she now verbally agrees to have me as her attorney. You don't mind? And he looked intently at the decayed and frightened Camille, who at these words nodded her head. Yes, I give this your verbal consent. Let Stephen Williams represent my interests, and you don't you dare barge in like that. And we're already here. So please, a warrant for the address of your apartment, and I'll ask you first if there are any illegal items, drugs or weapons in the apartment, or any investigative cases. You're not in a hurry, are you? Okay, think about it. Stephen Williams, though a retired general, is a smart man, but he's not all-powerful. Yes, Camille, think it over and try to be honest. Stephen Williams smiled at her and nodded his head. Say what you want to say. Don't be afraid of anything. Camille looked at the old general perplexed and nodded her head. She began to tell him that she was not hiding anything. She has no such illegal items, and even less criminal affairs. She now realized the reason why the investigators had burst into her house since morning. But she didn't let it show. And the girl was good. At once she understood what was going on. The general thought to himself, I didn't show it. If you had a little help, you could be a good specialist. But I'd like to help Christopher. And then I'd like to do Camille. Maybe put her somewhere else. Like the business house, for example, in their department. Or a clerk at the courthouse. Better pay and less work. Otherwise, she's skin and bones. In the meantime, John was going through the girl's apartment from head to toe, but he realized that in this miserable situation there was no case. There was simply nowhere to hide it. An old couch and a dresser, a small closet and a couple of chairs, a table and everything in the kitchen, a table and a couple of stools, an old refrigerator. His men had already dug through everything, but they looked at the chief with bewilderment. They said, sorry, there's nothing. It's a real case. How could there be on that criminal authority could be the size of a considerable? You can't hide it under the carpet or shove it under the floor. John kicked the corner of the couch with his foot and turned around and waved to the guys, saying, let's finish up. Thanks, Camille. Sorry, I don't know your middle name. For your cooperation. Tomorrow, please come to this address and familiarize yourself. Sign the record of today's actions. But I have work tomorrow. I can't. Well, nothing the day after tomorrow then. The report can wait, said John. And he thought to himself that it was not worth displaying this zero result in front of his superiors. That John hadn't found anything. That's how shamefully you run. Stephen, though, was a retired general and realized that his words were a display of lawlessness, but he couldn't take a jab at his colleague. True, Barnett did not say anything to such remarks of his, but only slowed his step, shooting his eyes in his direction. "Wait, old man, I'll see you again." When the door slammed behind him, Stephen Williams sat down on a chair in Camille's room and looked around. Poverty in all things, not unlike his general's mansion. "Thank God you made it. Don't worry. I hope you realize what they were looking for." The man's voice sounded calm and confident. "Yes, I do, and for nothing. I don't have it and couldn't have it." "Okay, let's make it so you're off today." The girl nodded her head and sat down on the bed. "Then let's get some rest, and I'll take care of business. If anything, I'll come over to your place, if you don't mind. You're at work tomorrow. Then I'll wait for you the day after tomorrow on a bench in the park." And nodding his head, he got up and left the apartment, going to the familiar police department. If the fish is rotting, one must act with one's head. I'll find out everything, and then be what happens. But I hope I can still get Christopher out of jail. I'd hate to see such talent go to waste. What can I say? A week later, Christopher walked out of the detention center and stood on the porch and raised his head to the sun. He stood and reveled in that feeling of the sun and the wind on his face with the freedom he had almost lost. Christopher reveled in the strength he felt in his hands that were not handcuffed. Now he understood all of his charges who had gone to prison through his fault or the fault of his coworkers. "Hello, Christopher. But here you are free." Stephen Williams stood outside the detention center with Camille and smiled. "Stephen Williams, darling, you're my teacher." "Is that really you?" The boy promptly ran down the steps and with outstretched arms embraced his old mentor, accepting him like a father. He stood and hugged his old teacher and wept, unashamed of his own tears as he cried, "Do you need this now? You shouldn't hold back your feelings." The man hugged the young man and patted him on the back. After a few minutes, he raised his face to the general and a smile played on it. "I now understand all my under-trial detainees, how hard it is for them, how hard it is to wear handcuffs. It is simply unbearable. Now you're on the outside, and everything will be fine. You know I didn't take the case, and if I did, I couldn't lose it. We got a case. Let's go. First, we'll go to my place, pray, talk, and then we'll go again. By the way, Camille, she's my new friend, and she helped me in many ways, particularly in your release. So you owe your freedom to her to a certain extent. Thank you, dear Camille. I am very, very grateful. But why was I released? Stephen Williams, I honestly don't understand a damn thing. The cell door just opened, and they told me to pack up and get out. And here I am. Is that a bad thing? My young friend, no, but it just puts me in a bit of a quandary, so to speak. Is this all a hoax? How real is this? Real, my friend. Very real. Now, come on over here and help me eat. My neighbor cooked me some delicious borscht, potatoes, cutlets. Jesus, after the government food, it all looks like food of the gods. The Trinity rode in the cab and kept silent. Each thought about his own, about the frailty of fate, when even the smartest and most experienced investigator can make a mistake that costs him his freedom, afraid and throwing things into the washing machine. Christopher sat down at the table and inhaled the aroma of making this borscht. How delicious it was. Christopher worked with a spoon. It was like he hadn't eaten for years, and he wanted to eat for years to come. Christopher, you're not borscht. There's a pot of borscht over there. And then there's the second course. So there's a spoonful, and a plate, and I'm lying down. You can't imagine how good it all tastes after the government carco. I believe you. But by the way, there is still a second one there, so no hurry and please. Go and make tea. Christopher looked carefully at his teacher. In his eyes read a mute question. Stephen smiled and wagged his finger at Christopher. Christopher, I hope this case will teach you something in the future. It's not a good idea to drop a case anywhere, much less take it out of the office. It'll do more than teach me. Burn that simple truth into my forehead with a hot iron. And the guy tapped himself on the forehead. The general himself was surprised at how simple and complex this case was at the same time. But every case teaches us something. He looked at Christopher and asked quietly, "Remember where you put the case?" For the life of me, I can't remember. If I did, I guess none of this would have happened. That's true. By the way, I say hello to you. Our cleaning lady Nancy's in Notto. But how did she get in? Oh, you fool, Christopher. Yes, in a very direct way. Camille and Christopher looked at each other uncomprehendingly. Both really did not understand how a simple cleaning lady could be involved in the loss of criminal materials, and even such an important criminal authority as the Bull. So, I'll start in order. The file was found yesterday, and you probably put it on top of the closet. But the one with the documents, so to speak, you put it there and safely forgot, because you never put the case there. Consequently, your brain didn't register that information. And again, your fault is that you put it on the top. But badly, the case simply fell into the gap between the wall of the closet and the wall. And imagine, it stayed there safely hidden from everyone. I'm a Turk, aren't I? You said that, and now I remember. Yes, I put it upstairs. I thought I'd put it in the cupboard and lock it. But I got distracted, and as luck would have it, I forgot about it. Well, not about it, but where I put it. And it fell. Although probably when I was moving furniture, and how did I not think to look in the space between the closet and the wall? Well, really. And Christopher tapped himself on the head. He only now remembered that he had actually put the case on the cabinet. And then he had been distracted and had safely forgotten where he had put it. And the case might have fallen behind the cabinet itself when he was closing the office door. A trivial oversight by any human being, which turned into imprisonment. But thank God, everything was found, and the truth came out. And Nancy, thanks to her cleanliness, opened your office, decided to clean it. And get this, she looked behind the cabinet and saw the lost file. But she doesn't know who lost what, so she took it to the duty officer, although our warrant officer himself, and you know very well what happened to him, almost had a heart attack, even though there was probably a squeal for the whole department. Yeah, that's how our cleaning lady solved the case better than any investigator. She got a bonus and a certificate of merit for it, by the way. And the order to release you, well, that's it. Jesus, who would have thought it would turn out like this? Christopher really didn't understand how it happened. But how was Camille involved in all this? Christopher immediately liked this girl, so he decided to draw her attention to himself. Yes, she was with me when I went into the office, and she was the one who told your cleaning lady to clean behind the closet. Christopher, you really have no idea. It was purely serendipitous. It's just that at my job, they clean all the corners behind all the nightstands and closets, once a week, so to speak, general cleaning. But I got into a conversation with the cleaning lady and asked her if they clean out the closets, and she jumped at the idea and said that it really wouldn't hurt to chase the cobwebs in Christopher's office. Yeah, scare the wicked with a broom. Yeah, you never know where you're gonna find something and where you're gonna lose it. But by the way, why is John Barnett on this case? Who knows? Just jealousy or something. I don't know. It's probably jealousy, by the way. Before you got here, he was the best in the department. Well, in quotes, so to speak. No wonder his zeal and tenacity could be channeled. He'd have been worth a fortune. He could ride you too. He could, but he didn't have a teacher like you. That's why he's messed up. The man doesn't know how to get his own way in front of his bosses. All right, Christopher, I hope we all learn a lesson. You don't have to lose your business. Clean behind the closet and the couch more often. But to me, what seems like a complicated case can be a trivial household occurrence and easily solved with a simple broom. And everyone laughed. Okay, Stephen Williams, thank you for your hospitality, your lunch. I'll pick it up later. And now it's time for me to go home. My bosses gave me 3 days off when I got out of detention, so I'm just gonna sleep it off. Camille, you hang in there with my dear teacher, and I have to go home tomorrow for 24 hours. Camille, can I walk you home? Christopher was as embarrassed as a boy to say such simple words. Yes, in fact, Camille was also embarrassed by the words of the young investigator. After all, the attention of such a guy was new to her. I don't mind. If all three of us go through the park and miss ice cream, and I'm a fool, tapping myself on the forehead. Stephen Williams, I promised you a GSS, but I never delivered. How unkind of me. It's okay. I'm definitely gonna get that girl that coffee. I owe her my freedom, after all. Christopher almost jumped out of his chair and ran into the hallway to get dressed. The old general looked at Camille and quietly, so that Christopher did not hear, said, "Look at him. He is not a bad guy, and he needs a girl like you, not spoiled, who knows the value of money and labor. If he likes me, he's nothing compared to me. Trust my experience. I know Christopher, and I can tell you they'll like you. So don't be a slave. This could be your happiness." Camille nodded her head and went into the hallway to get dressed. She really liked it. Christopher. Handsome, funny. You can tell he's reliable and smart. You can't go wrong with someone like that. The girl really wanted him to walk her home and then ask her out on a date, take her to a cafe on the street, ask her to marry him. She was already in the clouds and she didn't notice the smile on her face. Oh, I see Camille is smiling. That means everything's all right. Stephen Williams went out into the corridor to see the young people off and closed the door behind them. He said a quiet prayer to himself. He had never prayed before. Not really. Probably at the funerals of his mother and wife. And so, but when he had asked for Christopher. Yeah, Stephen, you'll soon be a devout man and start bowing before icons, or you'll go into a monastery, a novice to himself. But at the same moment, he thought that it really would be good to go to church, to put a candle to God and ask for forgiveness. But he was raised in the era of developed socialism, and they were not taught to pray and ask the higher powers for help, and for nothing. I want to pray for these young people. May everything be well with them, and they will invite me to their wedding, and maybe even to their christening. He smiled and waved to the young people from the window. Christopher and Camille waved back as they came out of the driveway. Good man, Stephen Williams. He really is a pro at what he does. Can you believe it? Almost 45 years in the force and has raised many generations of good investigators. And he has children, I understand, overseas. Yes, 2 sons, but they didn't want to carry on his work, even though my teacher's grandfather and great-grandfather were. Also, investigators worked in the KGB, even in the ranks of Tsarist Russia. It's like a huge potential. You have no idea. I can't imagine. I'm just a nurse in a nursing home for the elderly. I don't know much about investigators from movies and TV shows. Camille, I'm sorry, I really didn't mean to offend you. I'm sure there's a need for people like you. I mean, maybe I'll be a decrepit and infirm old man, and I'll need you to take care of me. It could happen, but it's possible. If we get married and live happily and prosperously until we're old, we will. I'm not asking you to get married right away, but at least I'll ask you out on a date. If you don't mind, maybe our relationship will really make a strong family. I'd really like that. You really like me. Camille said it, and then she flinched. What an idiot. Why did she ask that? Now she looks like a complete idiot. Just like that, she'd let the guy know she was asking him to marry her. The girl blushed and lowered her eyes. Christopher, sorry. I thought about it and said it out loud. It didn't come out right. Camille, you know, I like girls like you, straightforward, who say what they think, and then just apologize like that. I like you, and I'm not saying that out of gratitude for saving me. You're directly sympathetic. In fact, let's go to the coffee shop for coffee. We did. They sat in the cafe almost until it closed, and then they just walked around the city at night, breathing in the smell of fall and fallen leaves, not noticing the cold. For the first time, Camille fell in love with autumn with its yellow leaves, and the former leaves and chestnuts underfoot begging for rain, and the first frosts that burned her face so much, forcing her to breathe through her nose, inhaling puffs of vapor. Christopher, thank you for a wonderful evening, and I'll tell you frankly, for the first time I love the fall, which I used to hate because of its mud, slush, and dampness. And now that she wanted to say when you're around, I'm not afraid of anything, but I bought my tongue. You know, Camille, stopping in time is a great skill. And don't argue. Even if you meant to say something nice, I think my wife should have that skill. And Christopher meant it. He realized that Camille was a wonderful person, even though she was dressed poorly and unfashionably for the weather, but all that was fixable. And it was his job to take care of this girl, who had certainly had her life shaken and seen more than once, but it had not done her heart callousness. He gently pulled her to him and kissed her forehead. Camille, in this embrace of a strong young man, simply melted. She wanted to stand like that and not go anywhere. Not even not to move, not even to breathe. She was simply afraid to scare away her own happiness. But the guy, as if he had read her thoughts, and a little pulling the girl away from him, quietly said, "You know, Camille, it's time for you to go to bed. After all, tomorrow I have to work for 24 hours, and the day after tomorrow I will meet you in the morning from work and invite you to breakfast. You're in. I mean, what girl wouldn't want to have breakfast with a guy like you? And you don't have to worry. You won't lose me. But you're freezing and catching a cold in the wind. Maybe, but then you'd have to give me warm milk, a thermometer, and raspberry jam. And that's so nice. All right. Laughs. You're a dreamer. Go home. Here's your entrance. I hope I won't have to walk you to your apartment. Don't you want to? I should, and I already have. I was going to be offended." But Christopher kissed her softly on the lips and turned her around and pushed her toward the door. The girl did not argue. In fact, she was very tired for the day, and her immediate desire was to take a shower and just fall on the bed, not even taking off the warm robe. She walked up to her floor, and a smile played on her face. She had someone she loved and loved her now. At least Camille really hoped that everything would work out fine for them. Christopher saw the windows of Camille's apartment light up, and smiling, he turned around and went home. It was easy and simple for him. After all, the guy realized he had everything in this life, and not just a house and a job, but also a faithful teacher, mentor who will pull out of trouble, will not abandon. There is now a fighting girlfriend with whom you can build a happy family. But what is not beauty? And he woke up a pile of fallen leaves that fluttered in the air, with golden fireworks. How nice it is to go home to your hometown in the evening like this and realize that you are loved and waited for. I guess that's what happiness is supposed to look like, thought Christopher, walking home. The only one who certainly didn't sleep well that night was Investigator John. He'd never had a failure like this before. Yes, he had his little errors and shortcomings, but he could always turn most of them to his advantage. And what will happen now? The investigator was talking to himself, standing on the balcony and smoking a cigarette. He realized that Christopher was on good account with his superiors, even with the ministerial leadership. Plus, the charges against him were not confirmed. That's how he got even. Maybe I'll leave the militia and go up north. My uncle asked me to go there a couple years ago. Well, no. He wanted to get promoted, get a star. Now I'm sure these atrocities are being torn off me. Christopher won't just let it go. What's Christopher got to do with it? He ain't got nothing to do right now. And the old general will definitely raise it with the ministry and demand my dismissal. But John didn't even realize that none of the participants in this story cared about him. Christopher forgave him and forgot his prank long ago. Camille flew on the wings of love, and Stephen Williams simply let the situation go. It was the old general who understood how self-inflicted guilt could be devastating, often to the point of insanity and suicide. Serves him right. The man thought, standing on the balcony and gazing up at the starry sky. You don't want to dig a hole for your colleague. He smiled at the night sky and the stars and thought to himself, what is his wife doing in the other world? How is his mother doing there? Stephen loved his women, and to that little list he had now added another name, Camille. The man stood staring into the darkness. He wished he could just, like in the song, part the clouds, or rather that darkness with his hands, and light it up. Day and night, a young and beautiful girl who must have suffered a lot in her life. Nothing, my dear Camille. I won't leave you for nothing. No matter how much you may be against it, no matter how much Christopher himself may oppose it. I'll talk to my people at the ministry tomorrow. Here's a better place for you, but I'll leave my apartment to you. That's for sure. My girl. He'd long ago decided to leave the apartment to someone else. For some reason, he didn't want to describe it to the kids. And why should he? The children live on their own, separately across the sea. If none of his sons wanted to continue his dynasty of explorers, why give the apartment to them? He taught them, gave them a path in life. And as he saw it, the children settled down in America. And all he was left with were old albums and memories. A few months later, Christopher and Camille applied to the registry office and invited to the celebration. All their colleagues and friends, and the witnesses were Stephen Williams and Molly, Camille's best friend. It was a beautiful wedding that many people will remember. What can I say? All the wishes were sincere and from the heart. As for John Barnett, he didn't wait to be appealed against and thrown out of the authorities in disgrace. He wrote a report of his own accord and simply left for the north. And he did the right thing, thought John, looking out the window of the train, respecting him to the cold lands. I would simply not have been allowed to work there. They'd be watching me like rats, and my uncle would help me get a warm job. At the due date, Camille gave birth to twin girls and a boy. The older boy was named Stephen and the girl Sophia. You have an old general who not only helped Christopher in life, but also introduced him to Camille. Stephen Williams, you will definitely be our godfather, and don't even think of arguing. Camille said, rocking the babies in the stroller. Oh yeah, Camille, I wouldn't dream of it. My children have not made me realize that I can't refuse. Grandchildren, at least I'll be able to hear you and Christopher in the cradle. But you trust the old general with your treasures. He winked at her and looked at the babies. How much do they look like their parents? May they do well. He wished the kids in his mind, I will. Don't doubt it. There will be times when you'll have to babysit them. And I'll ask you for it, if you agree, of course. Not that I'll do it. I'll ask you to leave the kids with me for the weekend, so you and Christopher can have a vacation. Believe me, Camille, children are an incredible blessing, and thank the higher powers that you are in my life. Stephen brushed a stingy falcon tear from his eye, trying not to let Camille see his weakness. No need to show how lonely he was, though he was lonely. When these two get older, they'll start walking. So you old goat, you'll be running away from them yourself. From such thoughts, the man only smiled and leaned over the stroller and adjusted the blanket. Let them sleep. Sleep is the highest good which is given to man. And then we all grow up to be in a hurry, not realizing why. Is it worth the effort? Stephen Williams and Christopher said that John, the investigator who prosecuted him, he quit. Yeah, filed a report and moved up north. I think he said he had an uncle up there. At least be honest. Seems to me a guy like that can't have any relatives. Come on, you yourself realize that there are many people like John. Just some of them are not in power, do not wear uniforms. Stephen looked at Camille and marveled at how smart she was beyond her years. And even though she had no education, her reasoning was like that of a person who not only had several diplomas behind her, but had lived a life, or rather, several lives. That's how I won't believe in heredity, which is given by past generations. You believe in everything. And it's good that he doesn't. But I'll try to raise a general out of this boy. But at least, as long as I have strength, I'll raise him a real cadet, like they raised me at the academy. What about the girl? Or will you neglect her? No, never. She'll make a real battle buddy. That's how you are to Christopher. What's wrong with that? They both laughed, but immediately stopped. You don't want to wake little babies while they're sleeping so sweet. For the parents, for the godfather, because in them, each saw the continuation of their own life, of their own meaning. Returning home from his apprenticeship, Stephen Williams went to a small temple and put a candle for the repose of his favorite women. As promised, I asked the Lord for the best for everyone, what to say for Camille and Christopher. Thank you, Lord, I haven't seen you here before. The priest's words sounded unexpected, and Stephen even trembled. From what a few drops of relaxed wax sprang on his hand. I hardly ever come in here. I just baptized 2 twins here recently. But yeah, I remember you. You were the godfather. But you should come by more often, especially on Sunday. Come to the morning service. Our choir sings beautifully. And in general, you should go to God. Take my word for it as a retired colonel. Stephen Williams looked at the priest in surprise, but did not say anything. Apparently, everyone has his own destiny. Some go north, others turn to God. Maybe he did. Thank you. I'll try to come, but I can't promise. You don't have to promise. You just come. Stephen turned and walked out of the church. And the priest looked at his back through the open church doors for a long time, and then quietly crossed himself, wishing God's protection. Every man needed protection. Whether he believed or not, it did not matter. The road to the temple also led him. Not at once it was worth to pass not one war, loss of wife and betrayal of children to believe in the Lord, to take the tonsure and forgive all his offenders and eventually find peace. Lord, have mercy, save and keep. And it's time for us to think about worldly matters. And the priest went about his business, caring for each of his parishioners, of course, to the best of his ability. Another lost soul has come to God, he thought. So God's work is not in vain. And we are all his helpers. He mentally smiled at his own thoughts and once again thanked God for giving him happiness. Each person, apparently, has his own happiness. Camille ran like a madwoman through the park, realizing that she was catastrophically late for work. And it had to happen that very night the batteries in her watch stopped and the alarm clock didn't wake her up on time. Why should she be surprised? She had been living in total poverty for a long time, unable to afford proper food. And she'd forgotten about clothes when she bought herself normal clothes. Not from, oh shit. And the weather, as luck would have it, it was raining. God forbid my feet get wet and my leather shoes fall apart. And as it happens, she couldn't sleep last night. What can I say? She hasn't eaten properly in a long time. And last night finished with a glass of kefir and the last couple of bagels for the evening for what you say her waist is thin. Camille tried to cheer herself up, but it just didn't seem to work. And what good could it do? If you're on potatoes, cabbage, lettuce. But thank God, at work in a boarding house for the elderly, she could eat more or less normal food. What normal food? What do they feed our old people? Water. A couple of cereals or vermicelli or a handful. Thanks for that. I did have a snack. Camille went to bed with a meager supper last night, but sleep wouldn't come on an almost empty stomach. At work she had a breakfast of porridge, but she missed lunch because of an old lady. And the coworkers were friends. They took everything to the pigsty and left her nothing. Come on, they could have at least left a bowl of soup. Camille slammed the dining room door in indignation, glaring angrily at her coworkers. Camille, I'm sorry, the handout told her. I thought you'd eaten, but I didn't see you here, did you? But the girl didn't want to hear anything. What's the point? She was still hungry. True, the handout gave her a small bag. There's some kefir, some cookies. At least it's more of a relief from hunger. And still no paycheck. And the money hasn't been paid yet. As it happens, everyone probably got their paychecks. But I got nothing, as usual. What money is there? Cat's tears. At least I'm thankful I have a subsidy. Camille was orphaned at 14 when her mother and father died in a factory. What can I say? In their country, few people cared about worker safety. It was a similar situation here. It happened everywhere, especially if the boss grew up in the USSR. And there, the term labor safety for them is just an inscription in the report. My mother and father worked on a collective farm for grain storage, and one day they were just swamped. 10 tons of wheat crushed by the grain. Not just her parents. There were more victims, but only one Camille, out of all those living in the labor village, remained a round orphan. No, she was taken in by a distant relative, one of her father's cousins. But what kind of life was that? Survival. The woman didn't want to clothe and feed her, saying that you were better than others. No, she had some leftover clothes from the table after her in-laws. But was there any money in the house? What was the apartment in the center of the city, which the woman rented out and the proceeds simply put in her pocket? But Camille held on as best she could. She realized that just a little bit more, and it will be possible to get a passport. And they're all ready. And sell the apartment. I'll give you a room here. The woman insisted more and more. Don't sell it. What will I do? And where will I go when I get my passport? You'll throw me out on the street under the fence first. But she simply didn't say it out loud, and only shook her head stubbornly. For this, the old woman repeatedly beat her with a stick or a wet towel. I don't know what to say. It was not uncommon to hit a teenager with a poker. Nothing. Let me just get out of here. Wiping her tears, the girl said to herself under her breath. I wish with every fiber of my being that you'd grow up and move to the city. What can I say? Big city means big opportunities. She was wrong. To have all those opportunities, you had to have at least good friends in the right circles. Camille didn't have any. And where would they come from if you grew up in a labor camp on handouts from your aunt, and your parents could not give a proper education? When the girl stammered about going to university, she thought that the world had come to an end. Old Emily yelled so much that almost half of the village went to the street. Ever since then, Camille has realized one thing. She could only count on herself, no one else. But this did not kill her desire to help others. Now, rushing to work and staggering in the wind in a half-starved faint, she glanced at the old man sitting on the bench. It was a man she had noticed, and here a few days ago, the old man was sitting on a bench, leaning on a stick and staring at nothing. At first, she thought it was just another dog person, but no, it wasn't. She knew them all by sight, as she always went to work through the park, where residents from neighboring houses walked their pets. This one did, and there wasn't a dog in sight. Strange, she thought, and went on her way. Why should she care about another poor old man? Maybe he can't sleep with these feelings of money. That's why he gets up at 5 o'clock and walks around the room, or goes for a walk in the park. That's the best case scenario. I mean, the kids could easily kick the annoying parent out of the house. And now he's got nowhere to go. Come on, there's always somewhere else to go. The police, for example, there's always a solution for such a stubborn child. She believed in the police. She remembered the deaths of her parents, how the investigator tried to establish the truth. But the truth is always hidden in the place where the big money begins. That grain was unaccounted for. And so the death of the parents was simply written off on their own carelessness, but not on the industrial trauma. The investigator then spread his hands, trying to explain the situation to Camille. What is there to explain? The girl herself saw how the chairman and the owner of the storehouse lived, and he was not favorable to the death of her parents. But money decides everything. Old people, whatever they were, bored, no matter how much they taught. But they were parents. The girl's heart clenched involuntarily in her chest, and she stopped for a moment at the underpass. Memories of her family and parents always brought tears to her eyes. But this minute she saw with her own eyes how helpless old people could be. She involuntarily took a few deep breaths and was about to walk away when a young boy stopped beside her. A young guy stopped. Girl, are you feeling ill? Maybe you need help. Maybe call an ambulance. Or something else. So you tell me. The voice was very young. It sounded like a child. But when Camille turned her head toward the speaker, she was struck by the difference in appearance and voice. He was a handsome young man, the kind of man they say has a slim shoulders. He stood and looked at her intently. Yes, such not often fit her expensive coat jeans, probably some foreign firm. Black lacquered shoes that shone like something. Did you come by car? What a weather. Not a drop of dirt on his soft shoes. No, I'm fine. Thanks. I'm not fine. You're all beat up, and your breathlessness is not good. That, take my word for it. My grandfather used to have these attacks. It's people like you who kick old people out of their warm homes, often starve them or make them go begging. Like their Sophia begging in the street, or like that old man on the bench this morning for whom knows what kind of need he's sitting on, she thought. Yes, I know. But never mind. You're not going to care about me with those shoes. The girl took another deep breath and shook her knees, proudly raising her head higher. She walked on. No need to give her superiors a reason to reprimand her for being late. She had already paid for her carelessness once. It won't happen again. Camille once stopped and helped an old lady cross the street. But I'll be late again. I'll just fire you, that's all. There's always someone else to take your place. And right now, I'm just gonna take away your bonus. Do you understand me? Camille, I was only 10 minutes late, but half of her monthly salary went into the superintendent's pocket. What did she go through? No one knew. And who could she complain to? It was summer, and it was possible to survive well on apples that grew on the territory of the kindergarten. And there were sweet grapes growing there. But it would have been winter. Then this incident taught her a lot, and certainly to the fact that it is better not to lend a helping hand than to be so shamefully humiliated and destitute in everything. No, not an old man, not a child, can't stop me. And she ran hard to work, as she probably wouldn't run to a fire. And this day, she would not lie on the couch hungry, choking on her tears and thinking how fate had deprived her of everything. The day flew by in a hectic pace, just like every day before that ducks and 24 hours of walking with old people and feeding them from a spoon. But for some reason, Camille could not get that old man on the bench in the park near her house out of her mind. She did not understand what was the reason for such a selectivity of her memory. An ordinary old man, of whom there are many in the country, who often sit like that in the park or in palaces and think about their own things. No, there was something about him that attracted attention. Not a sadness, not an event in his eyes, a thought of the eternal, or maybe regret for the mundane. Okay, if anything, I'll leave the house early next time and ask him how he's doing. Maybe he does need help, 'cause I've become so callous and cruel. Like our superintendent has become a snake, a particularly poisonous snake. Camille smiled and helped a nice old lady outside. She had been friends with Evelyn for a long time. But friendship how? Camille looked after her, helped her shower, change her clothes, go for walks, and the old French teacher gave her life and language lessons. Camille, you're a little sad today. Did something happen in your life? Yes? How can I put it? Evelyn, it's nothing. But you know, I noticed an old man in the park near my house on a bench. But he wasn't homeless. He's dressed clean. Inexpensive, but neat. But you know, he sits, puts his head on a shelf and stares at nothing. What's so remarkable about that? We old people can often sit like that and stare at nothing. And there's nothing we can do about it. No, I understand that. I mean, you know, the look in his eyes. I honestly can't describe it. I thought I'd go over and ask him what happened to him. Maybe I could help. It would be the right thing to do. Maybe his kids kicked him out of the house and the old man's in the streets. Or maybe he can't remember where he lives or he lost his wife. Is that how I lost my husband? It seems like you realize with your head that he's gone. But sometimes I feel so sad that I can't. Evelyn, how about breakfast today? Camille changed the subject so as not to upset the kind old lady. Evelyn hadn't been with them long. Only 6 months ago. all because of her wayward son. He owed the bank money and couldn't pay it back in time, so the bank took the apartment, and the sweet old lady went into a nursing home. What happened to Evelyn's son? You never said. But Camille realized that the money he had received must not have done him any good, since his mother was silent about his fate. You know, Camille, it was relatively tasty. Why should I complain? I realize it's not home-cooked food, and I'm not healthy enough to cook it myself. And there's nothing to cook with. You know that when the bank took my apartment, I even rode around in basements and attics, eating whatever I could get my hands on. I even stood in the street with my hand out, begging for alms in French. Imagine that picture. It's a lot to see and hear in this life, especially when you talk to old people like that every day. Every one of them came here through no fault of their own. Some of them just drank their way out of the apartment, like their new tenant, an associate professor. Others have fallen into the clutches of crooks, like Evelyn's roommate, Nancy. Not such an old woman. What can I say? Everyone's brought here by chance, not by choice. Not Evelyn. I'm sorry. How's your son? Camille. You know, I don't know where he is or what's wrong with him. And to tell you the truth, I don't want to know. And you don't have to ask me. I'm sorry, Evelyn. I just must have done something stupid. It's all right, my girl. It's all right. It's true. You're not the only one who asks me that question, so I just got used to it. From that moment on, Camille never asked her charges personal questions. The shift passed quietly, and the girl was glad that at least this shift passed without adventures. She was walking home through the park, and she went through the park on purpose, through the bench where she had noticed that strange old man. But what she saw shocked her. No, he was sitting on the bench as before, but this minute tears were dripping from his eyes, bitter senile tears that quietly rolled down his wrinkles and cheeks and dripped onto his typist and hands. Camille could not stand it, and taking an old knapsack off his shoulder, approached him. Good morning. Is something wrong? I can help you. The old man turned his head at the young voice and looked at the girl with unseeing eyes. Camille quietly oohed and nodded and covered her mouth with her hand, so as not to further frighten either the people around or the old man himself. The man's eyes were covered like a shroud. Blindness could be total. Camille thought, and sat down on the bench next to him. She did not know how to behave. After all, the old man was nobody to her. And for whatever reason, he was crying. Maybe it was just a rush of feelings, or maybe there's another reason, and he doesn't want to share it with her. Excuse me, dear girl, I can hear that you're young. You don't have to pay attention to an old man. My eyes are not so blind. I can see your outline, but they're not sharp enough for me to see your pretty face. And I'm sure it is. And Camille smiled involuntarily. She was so pleased to hear those words. It was like a balm to her soul, even if it was said by an old man rather than a young man. She looked at him attentively, and without thinking, she took his hand and stroked it, not thinking how people passing by would look at it. I can help you with something. You know, I work in a home for the elderly. I can help you if you need it. Thank you, sweet girl. What's your name? Camille. Like Camille in Lewis Carroll's Wonderland. Mine's Stephen. Just Stephen, if you like, so no offense. Lovely creature. But your parents certainly had a certain sense of humor. At least they loved the tale. I don't think my parents even read it just in the years I was born. Fashionable was the given name. And I read the book, and really liked the heroine. I don't want to go into the world of the Cheshire Cat and the Wild Hatter. A smile flashed across the old man's face, and it did not escape the eyes of Camille, who was always sensitive to the moods of old men. His change of mood is one thing that makes me glad that I have distracted you from sad thoughts, and here you are smiling again. You know, I've noticed you for a long time. I often walk to work through the park, and I've always had no time to come over and ask you how you're doing. And then I see you crying. So am I. And you felt sorry for the old man. The girl shook her lips and realized she'd said something stupid. She shouldn't have said that, but just thought for a minute how her words would be perceived by other people, especially those to whom they were addressed. I apologize if my words offended you. Life had taught Camille to never look at how a person was dressed, and everything in her life had been changed by one incident, probably 3 years ago, when she'd just gotten a job at a nursing home. An old man had come in. How did he get in? He was brought in by ambulance from the local hospital. He was dressed in a hospital suit pajamas. He didn't have much on him. One bag of personal endeavors, all unshaven and overgrown. Camille was just starting to work then and on many things, or rather, on many of the inhabitants of the boarding house. She looked with a certain only and squeamishness, but the nurse Sophia had opened her eyes to many things. Don't look so squeamish, girl. Even an ordinary homeless man can hide under the guise of a general. They bring in this old man, and he's not an old man at all, but a millionaire. What's he doing here? It goes on. You're not Belly or the Canaries, but Camille. You were a fool, and you'll always be a fool. How did I get my apartment from the general? No less. Indeed, the very story that happened to Smith was like a kind of Cinderella fairy tale. But the fairy tale heroine was a simple nurse. They just brought in a man suffering from memory loss, and he seems like a nice guy. He's got his papers on him, and he's not dressed like a bum, and it looks like you're holin'. But he doesn't remember anything. Where is he from, and who is he? Why is he here? Turns out he was just drunk. The man, being a guest at a friend's house, fell and hit his head. The friend thought he had already given his soul to God, but he hadn't. It was just a simple blackout. And then what happened? Camille asked as Smith told her story. Then what happened? Nothing. A friend drove him to another town and dumped him. He woke up and didn't remember a thing. But the brave policeman sent him back to us, and he was already old. And the brain is a tricky thing. His memory came back to him. And it turned out that he was not just an old man, but a police general. Oh, come on. Wasn't anyone looking for him? He probably has a wife and kids, and no one filed a report. But it's not that there was no one. He still has a wife and kids, but apparently no one thought to look for him in another area. And here he is. And when I remembered everything, you gave me an apartment. For thinking about him and spoon-feeding him, I gave him shots and compressors. When he had a headache, poor guy. That's it. So don't look at people with a glance. Now she pressed her lips together and apologized to the old man again. Oh, don't be in pain, young lady. I realize that a crying old man is like a crying baby. You want to hug him, stroke his head, like you're putting my hand on him involuntarily. You want to comfort him. It's right. It's human. I'll even say more God's orthodoxy. The historian looked carefully at the girl. He felt the warmth of her hands, saw the outlines of her face, but could not see her features. His eyesight was no longer good, but inwardly he realized that Camille was pure of heart, although life had used her mercilessly. But the old man himself could not say the same about himself and his life. I guess the time has come when one draws the line and says this was in my life. And this I missed through my own fault. Then can I buy you ice cream? You know, it's been so long since I've sat in a park and had ice cream. Camille didn't know how she said that, but she really did have a craving for ice cream. Just sitting on a bench, eating a sweet treat, talking to a stranger about nothing. Do you really want that? My young ladies, the old man's face brightened up, and an inner light began to shine through the shroud of blindness in his eyes. Well, I'll be honest, it's not a hot summer outside, but I think you and I both deserve this sweet treat. You do? Yeah, I can't believe, Camille. I'm craving chocolate ice cream on a stick. There was a note of happiness and joy in the old man's voice, and Camille promptly jumped up and ran to the ice cream parlor, which stood not far from the park entrance. She opened her wallet and pulled out the last bill from there. Yeah, careless. Yes, Camille. Spending the last of your money on ice cream. Fuck that. This is the last time we live, and I don't have much joy in my life. Maybe it really is that old guy. She handed a bill to the clerk and said 2 ice creams. Please, 1 white, 1 chocolate. Here you go. Have a good appetite. Camille took the 2 ice creams and returned to the bench. She held out the chocolate ice cream to the old man, placing it carefully in his hand. Thank you, my dear. How much do I owe you? Nothing. You keep me company, and I give you ice cream. Then let me make you an offer in return. Next time you're free, we'll meet here in the park, and I'll buy you a scoop of ice cream and coffee. Trust me, it's quite tasty. I know, I tried it once. It's really good. Okay, I'll take it. She did try it once in a cafe, but it was so long ago, probably in her past life, when Alex asked her out and gave her Camille. True, that relationship had not progressed any further. Having found out that she was an orphan, that she worked for pennies in a boarding house for the elderly, he simply left her. I mean, what can a promising student have? And she's just a nurse. Alex, why did you leave me? One day, she met him in town and asked him about it. Why would I want such a penniless orderly? Alex stood there all cocky, fashionably dressed with a cigarette in his hand, and looked up at her. There's really no reason to. Camille walked and berated herself for asking Alex about it. But why? You knew perfectly well the answer to the question. And did you want to hear it? No, especially not in front of witnesses. That was the most frustrating part. After all, when Alex answered, there were several guys and girls standing next to her, and all were witnesses of her shame. Since then, a girl for publicity to put a question to which she knew the answer perfectly well. But now was not the situation, and she could not ignore the old man's offer. Then, my dear Camille of Wonderland, tell me, if you would be so kind, when is your day off? Tonight I'm off after a 24-hour nap, and then I have to work tomorrow. Then we'll have Thursday off. We can treat ourselves on Thursday. Thank you, Camille. See you Thursday then. When can I expect you at this very spot? And the old man tapped the ground with his stick. I'll be on my way home from work, so I can keep you company without going home. It will be convenient for you at 10 o'clock. It's always convenient for us old folks, especially if that's what the lovely young lady wants. Until Thursday then, 10 o'clock. And standing up, he theatrically raised his hat and bowed his head and walked quietly down the alley. I nod my wand at 100, so he's not so blind he can see the road. And Camille exhaled. What's the last of the money spent? The ice cream is eaten, and now all that's left is to live to see the paycheck. And it's good that the paycheck is in 3 days. And at home there's still cereal and tea and butter, so we can live. It's all right. Camille had come out of such hungry days. She smiled to herself and went home. At home, she still had to prepare a simple lunch and dinner, dividing a cup of grits and a little butter for 2 meals. But the figure like a model, no extra pounds. Camille ate and turned on the TV. It was the only thing of value in her apartment. A Sony TV that she had bought from a neighbor for a small sum of money. The girl often sat in the evenings and watched news and soap opera while talking to it. Who else could she talk to? She couldn't even get a cat, because it had to be fed. And even herself often didn't have enough money for proper food. Cabbage, sometimes beets and potatoes, and with her paycheck she could buy herself a stick of sausage. A woman took pity on her and sometimes invited her to her dacha for kebabs, and Camille helped her dig the garden and plant potatoes. No, she did not complain about the old nurse. She helped her with food from her garden. She took pity and gave her really good advice. Even twice she covered for her superiors. And you can feed her with bread and water. Do not tell him that sorry, Barsik or Merzik. There's no money. Go catch mice. So we had to talk to the TV. But this old man Camille didn't even ask who he was or what his name was. Oh, come on. Thursday's coming up. We'll have something to talk about later. In the meantime, we should get some sleep. I have to go back to work tomorrow. Like it or not, She was forced to work 24/7 by necessity. I don't know what to say. She's got to make a living. Soon we'll have to buy new shoes, but there's no money. But all the old ladies in the boarding house say I'm the best soul. So it's not for nothing that I eat my bread and breathe this air. Camille, and indeed, all the old people in the boarding house simply adored, which caused a lot of dissatisfaction with the management. But the girl simply did not understand why she was scolded for this. After all, on the contrary, the superiors should praise. Everyone is satisfied. No conflicts. What is there to say? She could calm down even the most conflicted and bad-tempered pensioner. Persuade her to take a pill or eat such unpalatable porridge. Camille, but you're a good talker. Always telling her friend and realizing what that damn porridge had made, bringing her down. But you talk like you're gonna eat it and spoon it. No, what's a spoonful? You'll be lining up for more. And everyone laughed. It especially pissed off the superintendent. After all, if one of the patients was cranky or didn't want to eat or take pills, everyone turned to Camille for some reason. The relatives and the patients themselves often called her to comfort, look after, feed, and help with hygiene. Although before the appearance of this girl in her boarding house, all the questions were solved only by her head Evelyn. Yeah, she knew what they called her behind her back, a particularly venomous snake. But she didn't give a damn about that, no matter what. One day a general came into their institution, and it was the one who suffered from memory loss, and whom Sophia, an orderly, had once looked after. So thought the wench. She didn't just walk him out with Camille. But when it came to thanking a man like that, they both didn't say a word about the superintendent. In the past, Smith would have run to her for advice. And Camille, she's a without Sophia. It's all right. She's still got them dancing. But the opportunity presented itself to the headmistress immediately. On Wednesday, she summoned Camille from duty to her office and ordered her to inform her that she was staying on for the second day. You see, Nancy, who's changing you. Well, she needs to go to the pension fund right away. There's no one to replace her but you, so Camille will have to work. Camille sighed heavily and realized that she wouldn't be able to have a good rest, but to refuse would mean to fall into the disfavor of the headmistress even more. But the plus side was that she received money for each duty, so she could buy herself a new vegetable. She nodded and lowered her arms. And it's okay. You'll work. You'll get a decent paycheck later, and I'll give you a bonus. Thanks, Evelyn. You're welcome. Go to work. Then you can sleep at night. By the way, 200 hours. If you say anything, I'll let you, but only from 12 o'clock to 2 o'clock, and no more. Camille nodded and left the office, went to the locker room, and sat down on a bench near her locker. She rested her head on the cold iron to cool her thoughts and closed her eyes. I wonder how her old man is doing. Who was he? Wouldn't he take offense at her? At least there's something I can do. Work is work. He's probably got a pension by now. Yes? And if he's sitting there all the time, I'm sure we'll see him again. But Stephen, that was the name of the old man from the park bench, did have a pension, and a lot of it. He'd worked all his life in the organs, and he'd made general. And then he was invited to the department in his native institute of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, which he also graduated from, graduating 6 young lieutenant. But recently his family has not been doing well, and he himself did not understand why. The children seem to be settled. They live, however, abroad, often come for holidays, but all the same, he kept his wife long ago. About 10 years ago, she caught pneumonia, and 3 days later, the doctors stated death. They said it was a new flu virus, a stamp against which there is no effective treatment. From that moment, Stephen's own disease began to progress. On the background of nervous disorder, he rapidly began to lose his sight, but let him go blind, but not to see the world. And what am I going to do without Sophia? My children and grandchildren are abroad. They call me, but who needs a blind old man? No one. So he lived alone like a finger. Lately, however, a former pupil of his, Christopher, started visiting him. A good and savvy investigator, up and coming and very promising. Christopher came to his teacher purely by chance for advice, and when he saw his condition, he realized that the old man alone cannot survive. And from that moment, he almost every day, well, at least for 5 minutes, but will run away. He'd ask how he was doing. He'd drop off groceries, buy medicine. Christopher, why are you wasting your money? Young researchers, I know they don't get much, and you're young. You should be spending it on girls for your family, and you spend it on me. And I'll take offense if you don't take my money. It's over there on the dresser. Take it. It won't offend an old man. And Christopher would take, but would take so 10 or 20 R, but no more than that. Rather to really not offend the old man. But the experience that the retired general was giving him was worthless, and Christopher understood that. So he went and helped, learned, and it paid off. The young investigator was considered the best. They put him on the most difficult and responsible cases, and that was worth a lot. How are you doing, Christopher? The general asked him, looking into his eyes like his own child. There is one thing I cannot give me. And Christopher opened his briefcase folder and took out the next case. Read its materials, Stephen, and both of them analyzed it to the smallest detail. And the investigator rejoiced like a child. After all, the old and experienced general pointed out to him such points of detail, which he himself would not have paid attention to or would not have thought of these or those conclusions. But Christopher, you taking a case out of the office, I don't approve of that in any way. As an old professional investigator, you know, it's one thing for me not to tell anyone, and another thing, if someone in your department sees it, then you're in trouble too. Yes, I understand, Stephen Williams, but you see, it's one thing for me to give you my word for it. It's another thing to read a witness's statement from a sheet of paper that he held in his hand, signed, and everything. I agree, but be careful. You know that very well. And Christopher was nodding his head. But one day what the old general had so much feared happened. The case was lost. And what was most interesting, Christopher could not understand where he had lost the materials of the new investigation. Either someone had dragged them out of his office or had really taken them to Stephen Williams and simply didn't realize he'd left them behind. This is the second time I've broken into the office and the apartment, and I can't find a damn thing. Maybe he did leave it with the general, but strangely, I never showed him the file. Maybe. And Christopher pounded his fist on the desk with anger. The young investigator's carelessness had played havoc with his office door. Loudly spoken words into the void. Attentive ears in the corridor, his words were heard by the right ears, and a snide smile played on the man's face. There you are, young man, he thought. No need to nurse a thief. You've lost your case. Do me a favor and answer for it, to the full extent of the law. Yeah, well, every man has his detractors. But Christopher had more and more in the department every day. To say what to say, his youth and success, beauty and rapid growth in the career ladder did not give rest. A lot of people intended to mess with him. But who would go against the favorite of the bosses? And the bosses showered Christopher with many favors. Need an apartment? No problem. First in line. Need a car? No problem. Let's get you a used Jeep. Need a summer vacation? It's always you, dear Christopher. And plus a vacation to the minister's boarding house. But Christopher himself wouldn't listen to anyone when they told him it couldn't be like that. You're flying too high. Watch it, boy, you'll fall. Though the investigator himself did not listen to anyone. Intuition and the general's advice won't let me fall. Though Stephen himself saw all this and wanted to tell Christopher to be more careful, but his success, the old man himself believed in his integrity and luck. But in a moment, the luck turned away. One day, Stephen Williams was called home by telephone, and an unfamiliar voice said quietly to the radio operator, mocking every word, "Well, General." Yes, jumped from this favorite Christopher. They detained him on suspicion of tampering with the case. You know how to raise a replacement, don't you, General? Maybe that's how you earned your general's stripes, too. Who's talking? It's not a joke. Call the 3rd Department yourself. Find out for your favorite. And the speaker hung up, and the short beeps sounded in the old investigator's ears for a long time. Stephen stood by the phone and could not believe what he had heard. If it had happened to someone else, he simply would not believe it. But Christopher really did often carry cases with him. Could he have lost them or something? Lost, but there's no way he's a forger. No, we should call. He fumbled for the phone number of his home department and asked the desk clerk to put him through to Deputy Sam. Sam, hi. It's Stephen. Oh, hi, Stephen. How you doing? I'm fine. Why don't you tell me what's going on with Christopher? You don't know. He got arrested. Not for nothing, but for losing a case. But you know, somebody's got a grudge against him. And the lost case was turned into a forgery case. And that's a lot of time. Yeah, I realize that. But it's true that they can't find the case. Well, it was already done, and all the evidence had been collected. A guilty verdict has been written. Just give it to the court and hold it. Get your captain's stars. But no, you show up for work in the morning, and there's a search of the office. Where's the case file? He's not here. And it's a tough case. You know who? Where from? Christopher and I have been talking. Probably about 6 months ago. Stephen lied to avoid hurting his student even more. Who knows who's listening to them? And how could it be used later on in the future? Yes, thought the old man. What a turn of events. And the case of the deputy prosecutor himself was taken on a bribe. And there's a lot of other stuff on top of that. I don't know. Either he lost it willfully or recklessly, but it came from the top. A command to reclassify the loss of investigation materials as deliberate concealment of traces of a crime, and with selfish motives. And this is already, my friend, my dear friend, you understand, threatens a lot of problems. Where is he now? Yes, in the detention center for now. Then it's up to the courts. Okay, thanks. Keep me in the loop if you need anything. Call me anytime. And the general hung up the phone. He suddenly felt sick, and he could hardly stand on his feet, instantly sat down on a chair near the phone. No, he should go outside, get some fresh air, to think. He quickly threw on his jacket and put on his old but still sturdy and warm overshoes and went outside. Stephen Williams liked to think and walk. But even now his head was not working well. Think, old fool, think. How can Christopher be helped now? He didn't know. That Christopher had not falsified the case, of that he was sure, but that he might have lost it. You're a fool, Christopher. Used to dragging your cases around with you. Now he's got it all to himself. And then his heart snapped with unbearable pain. Stephen had long ago attached himself to Christopher like a native son. He regarded his defeat as his own failure. The old man simply sat down on his favorite park benches and cried. He couldn't contain his own emotions, which were overflowing. He probably would not have been as worried about the children as he was about Christopher. At that very minute, Camille was walking through the park from work, having been in the boarding house for 2 days. She could hardly stand on her feet and simply could not believe that the manager had let her go home and had not left her for the 3rd day. I'm going to die if I stay in this wonderful facility for another 5 minutes. I urgently need to go home to the bathroom, and then I'll sleep for sure until tomorrow morning without the back legs shaking and on dropping my jacket. Camille promptly got out from under herself, all thinking lest the superintendent, God forbid, should notice her and leave her for the 3rd day. She walked along the road and dreamed of taking a shower and falling asleep on the old, but such a favorite couch, sat in the middle, but so comfortable to sleep on, thought Camille, and imagined how the Chinese have a thin woolen blanket with a head and would sleep on it. Strange as it may seem, the second 24 hours passed quietly and peacefully, and probably all because it was a day off. All the superiors had gone home, and the new young doctor was in charge, and therefore, that's why everything went so smoothly. I was able to sleep not 2, but a whole 4 o'clock, and earned a chocolate bar from the grateful old lady. That thought made her very happy. What does it take to be happy? Thought the girl, to go home and sing so cheerfully. Despite the overcast weather, her plans were simply not destined to come true. At least not in the next few days, which put her usual way of life upside down. As Camille walked home through the familiar park, she wondered if the nice old man she had eaten ice cream with was waiting for her on the familiar bench. And has he forgotten his invitation? No, he hasn't. There sits my old man. Camille saw a familiar pale figure sitting on a familiar bench in a gray coat and the same gray windbreaker. But as she approached the bench itself, she was simply stunned. She had seen old people crying before, and the picture itself had always looked horrifying. Sadly, now the tears weren't just rolling down her cheeks. They were pouring from the old man's eyes, making the already faded color of his eyes almost colorless. Could this really be? God, how long would these people suffer? But who had hurt him? What had happened in the couple days she'd been working? Good afternoon, Stephen Williams. Are you crying again? Who hurt you? The man raised his eyes and looked at her with an unbelieving gaze. How he had grown old and beaten in the last 2 days. It was frightening. Camille sang with fear and a piercing cold, but I tried not to let it show from the situation itself. Camille, is that you? Yes, I'm fine. It's just that you understand, young lady. A student of mine is being accused of a terrible crime he didn't commit. Even though I'd warned him to always be careful, he did. Now you blame yourself. Don't be, Stephen Williams. Your pupil is not 5 years old or 10. I think he's an adult. He should know what he's doing and how to do it. Camille, you just don't understand. Christopher was like my own son. Where are your children? The girl knew very well how to talk to old people. And now she's just trying to change the subject. Yes, that my children, they have been living in America since 20 years. Their children were born there. That is, my grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I'm almost 70 years old. My dear Camille, how do I look? But you know, you look about 60, 62 years old. Why don't you want to move in with them? You know America. It's the land of opportunity. Come on, what's the land of opportunity? The decaying West has always been a bunch. There was a note of steel in the old man's voice. Oh, come on, Camille thought. We should just shut this whole thing down for good, or the old man will have a fit. And then they'll say I drove him crazy talking about America. But she really wanted to go to this country of unlimited opportunity and success. And here he is. Camille, I apologize if I answered you rudely. I'm just an old Soviet man, and socialism is closer to me than capitalism. And my children and grandchildren have been asking me to go there for a long time. The pensioner began to tell. A little calmed down, but what to do there? Go to the beach or feed pigeons, so this pleasure and here is enough. There's nothing to do. And Christopher, well, that's my apprentice. He thought about it for a minute, and the old warrior's logic and intuition were making themselves felt. Stephen really wanted to talk. So he spoke, and the girl listened attentively. She realized that here and now a lucky lottery ticket might fall into her hands, and then the way to America would open up. So my Christopher, he's a talented investigator, works for the police. There's a police station not far from here, and he comes to me for advice on this or that case. He always had one downside. Christopher often took criminal cases from his office and brought them to me. I hope you're not a silly girl and realize it's illegal to take a case out of an investigator's office. And he did. He lost the file. Camille was well aware of the dangers of such a turn, even to the best investigator. He didn't just lose it. I think it was stolen. And it's a big case, but now the case is gone. And Christopher was charged with falsifying documents and put in jail. Has there really been a verdict yet? Did the girl put her hand over her mouth? No, they're only keeping him in pretrial detention, but they'll bring him to trial. We need to find that lost file. But Stephen Williams, you realize how unrealistic that is. It could be anywhere. I understand. But the day before, he called me and said that he had searched his office and his apartment and found nothing. So he could only come to me with the file and leave it with me. God, what an old fool. I must go home at once. I'm sorry, dear Camille. The situation is such that our essay with you is temporarily postponed. I hope to see you again, but I'll certainly wait for you here at this very spot every morning at 10 o'clock. And raising his hat, the man walked towards the exit of the park. Camille's sleep and fatigue vanished, and she jumped up from the bench and ran after the old man. Stephen Williams, I'm sorry to intrude, but may I help you? I don't know how, but my legs are fast. My eyes can see very well. I can look under the couch or poke around in the corners. You'll have to excuse my insistence. Besides, tomorrow is my day off. I can afford to help you as much as I can. But why not? I'm pleased that you're willing to help out like this. So, I'll do it. I'll have to shut down the whole house, though. If there's nothing to do, at least you can help me clean up. I'll make sure you have lunch. I've got a neighbor who helps me clean, grocery shop, and cook. But I'll help you. She hasn't eaten anything since this morning, and her belly is treacherously disfigured. Stephen directly stopped at that sound. He may not have seen well, but the fact that his hearing remained excellent, there's no arguing about it. Baby, my dinner first, and then everything else. And a hungry soldier is a bad soldier. He walked with this girl to his house and thought how fate often brings people together. Here she had brought him and Christopher together. Now here was this girl, Camille, working in an old people's home. He smiled to himself for the first time in days and thought it was so you old fool wouldn't feel lonely. Should we let her in the house? Yes. People should always stand above the material world. All that bling. That's what he kept saying. Money, power, and pride will ruin you. So respect people if you can't love them. Don't be proud. Never give up. But he must have missed the point somewhere. And now he's walking home with this girl, with the clear intention of feeding her at the very least, helping Christopher and himself find the lost files. How he gets it back is another matter. Come in, Camille here. Put on my granddaughter's slippers. You can see your size. Wash the bathtub, towels, wash your hands. And if you want to take a shower, I'll make you something to eat. I haven't eaten since this morning. Yeah, thanks. Hands, I think. I used to shower at work. Believe me, we're very clean. And don't look poorly dressed and your stomach's churning from hunger for nothing. And she shrugged. It's just the way things are. He poured her a full plate of delicious Navarre borscht and put it on the table. Added sour cream and sliced bread. The second was broth, but also rice and cutlets. Yes, thanks to the neighbor on the cooked quite a lot will be for 3 days. Not with such an appetite as this skinny girl eats. It won't last long. Well, he enjoyed watching her eat, and for some reason Camille reminded him of Christopher, a young and hungry man just like her. Stephen smiled and motioned her a plate of bread. Camille ate and couldn't get enough of such delicious borscht, and with sour cream she hadn't eaten in a long time. Probably not since her parents had died. Only her mother could make such delicious borscht. She was the only one who added garlic to it. She noticed how warmly the old general was looking at her and stopped a little.